Warrior Lore. Chapter 51:10. Someone had arrived in Zichen's room ahead of time, and he, a shadow destroyer, had not noticed at all. That person just sat there, smiling at Zichen. There were no energy fluctuations on his body, but Zichen felt a strong sense of danger. Zichen had fought with 7 Powers Realm Spellbreakers before, but this person had not shown any power, yet he could make him feel threatened. He must be extraordinary. Zichen looked at him, but his expression did not change much. Then why don't you guess where I come from? The person glanced at Zichen and said lightly. Zichen said, "The Hall of Spiritual Spells." A strange light flashed in the person's eyes. He seemed very surprised. Why? Zichen said, "The Hall of Spiritual Spells is a place for business. The most important thing is fairness. But I did not see it that day." It's that simple? No. Not only did I not see fairness, I saw aggressiveness. Zichen said, "I don't think it should be like this, especially when it comes to business. Because no matter where it is, business is all about harmony." The person nodded. That's right. The Hall of Spiritual Spells does not lie, but in terms of honesty, we absolutely cannot lie. So you have already guessed that I did not come to you for the 10 shares of true Dharma power. At that time, Zichen not only took away the corpse and terminated the transaction, but also took away an additional 1,000 true Dharma power. The reason for this was because the Hall of Spiritual Spells did not follow the rules in the first place. The person said again, "My name is Peng Ran. Why don't you guess again why I came here?" Zichen shook his head. "I can't guess." Peng Ran laughed. "You guessed it long ago. Is it because you care about my face? Very good, at least that's what I think." Zichen's emotions had completely calmed down. Peng Ran withdrew his smile and said, "I came this time not only to see the only shadow destroyer who broke the rules, but also to tell you a piece of news. The forces in the depths will no longer target you. But don't be happy too early. This doesn't mean that you can rest easy. There are still some radicals who won't let this go. But even if they target you, there will be a limit. So as long as you don't die within this limit, it's fine." Zichen nodded, indicating that he understood. "Aren't you going to ask why?" Peng Ran looked at the calm Zichen and asked curiously. "Maybe it has something to do with the mysterious rules." Zichen said, "You really are a smart person. One good thing about dealing with smart people is that you don't have to beat around the bush." Peng Ran took out an item and threw it to Zichen. Zichen subconsciously took it. "I'll leave the Hall of Spiritual Spells here to you. Manage it well. When you have the ability, go and take a look at the depths." Peng Ran said, "Of course, I believe that the 6 Forces state is definitely not your final destination." With that, Peng Ran disappeared. Zichen finally breathed a sigh of relief. This time, he had made the right bet. Back then, those Dharma breakers had taken over the nest and broken the rules of this world. And when the world was not complete, there were also problems in this world. Perhaps this problem had something to do with the passage that had not appeared in the depths. So now that another shadow destroyer had appeared, they did not mind taking a look or waiting to see if he could bring some changes to this world. Just as Peng Ran said at the end, as long as he could continue to break through, there would be no problems. Zichen looked at this residence. He probably would not be staying here in the future. Holding the token Peng Ran gave him, Zichen went straight to the Hall of Spiritual Spells. When he reached the first floor, everyone's expression changed when they saw Zichen. They had all heard about what had happened yesterday. This lord's strength was simply beyond their imagination. Zichen went to the second floor again. During this time, no one dared to stop him. He looked around and did not see the woman who had led him here that day. The others did not dare to approach Zichen. There was fear in their eyes. They were afraid that he was here for revenge. Zichen took out the token and said, "Where should I go next?" When everyone saw the token, their eyes widened and they hurriedly bowed to Zichen. This was the token of the highest steward. Just yesterday, Zichen had killed that steward. "Sir, please follow me." Immediately, a woman walked over. After seeing the token, she was not afraid anymore. With this item, he was definitely not here for revenge. "How many stewards are there here?" The woman led Zichen away from this level and headed straight for the upper level. "Sir, there is a deputy steward, a 5-strength realm cultivator, and 2 floor lords." The woman explained to Zichen. The third floor was not small. About half of it was occupied. The servant led Zichun to a room. "My lord, it's inside." But before she could push the door open, she heard a voice coming from inside the door. "Bitch, I've already said a lot of good things. Don't be ungrateful. Let me tell you, the steward is dead. Next, I'll be promoted to steward. Hurry up and hand over the corpse of the lawbreaker beast. Otherwise, I'll find an excuse to kill you. That'll be the end of everything." Zichun waved his hand, stopping the woman from speaking. He frowned. "Now that's a good girl. Next, you'll serve me and do whatever I tell you to do. Now, take off your clothes." "Sir, I have to go back to work." A woman's voice rang out. It was the same woman from yesterday. "If I tell you to stay, then stay." The man said angrily, "Bitch, you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Then a woman's shriek rang out. Zichun pushed open the door. "Fuck, who let you in?" The man cursed, but when he looked up and saw who it was, he couldn't finish his sentence. At this moment, the beautiful woman was already pressed on the table, exposed to the view of the spring scenery. "What are you doing here? Who let you in? Do you know what this place is?" The man pretended to be calm and shouted, "Why haven't you left yet?" Thankfully, he knew shame and let go of the woman. When the woman saw Zichun, she lowered her head in shame and began to cry. Zichun produced a command medallion and waved it at the man. When the man saw the command medallion, his face fell. He looked to the side and saw the woman who had brought Zichun in. He nodded quietly. The man's face immediately turned pale. "Sir, please let me explain." Zichun didn't look at the assistant steward. Instead, he looked at the sobbing woman. "What's your name?" The woman looked up and said quietly, "Sir, my name is Maria." Zichun nodded and said, "The name is not bad. You lost your payment." Maria looked at the corpse of the lawbreaker beast on the ground, but didn't dare to collect it. "What are you waiting for? You dropped your stuff. How could you be so careless? You've dirted Sir's floor. Can you bear the consequences?" The assistant steward shouted. Maria was so frightened that she trembled. She quickly collected the corpse. Zichun said, "If anyone asks, just say that I said that there's no need for an assistant steward." The assistant steward's face was filled with shock. "What do you mean? You want to fire me? Let me tell you, Before he could finish, Zichun flicked his finger. Chapter 51:11. Fire? Am I that kind of person? Before his body disappeared, the assistant manager heard Zichun's calm words. He was only in the 5-strength state. Otherwise, he wouldn't have coveted Maria's law-breaking beast's corpse. Because this was related to whether or not he could advance to the 6-strength state. But he didn't expect that Zichun would come. Moreover, he came as a manager. What was even more unexpected was that Zichun had the guts to kill someone in front of him. Wasn't he afraid that Sir would blame him? After all, he was appointed by the higher-ups. Maria and the woman stood there, not daring to move. Obviously, they were scared stiff. Zichun waved his hand, indicating that the two could leave. When Maria returned to the 2nd floor, the other people looked at her strangely. They naturally knew that Maria had been called up by the assistant manager. As for what would happen, everyone could guess. However, after the woman explained what had happened, their expressions changed again. The assistant manager was dead? Wasn't this newcomer, Lord Zichun, a little too barbaric? After closing the door at night, Zichun met the people of the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Although there were only 3 floors, there were more than 100 people working here. They all had their own duties. Originally, there was 1 manager and 2 assistant managers. They were usually called Hall Master and Assistant Hall Master. There was a Hall Master on each floor. As for the Hall Master on the 3rd floor, the assistant manager was temporarily in charge. There weren't many things on the 3rd floor, but they were all high-quality goods. Usually, no one would pay attention to them. Because the 7-strength state were all inside, there were very few people outside. Therefore, the majority of the profits were still on the 1st and 2nd floors. After Maria's explanation, Zichun knew that the Hall of Spiritual Spells was just a business. It wasn't an official force. Other than their Hall of Spiritual Spells, there were 7 other halls of spiritual spells in this area and 4 halls of spell breaking. The number of halls of spiritual spells was double that of spell breaking. From this point, one could see how many spiritual spell practitioners there were and how precious spell breakers were. Between the two different spell halls, resources could be exchanged, but one had to go to a place called the Spirit Breaking Hall. That was the core of all resources, and any resource that one wanted had to be exchanged there. Zichen briefly listened to the names of some resources. Among them, the one that left the deepest impression was that the Spirit Breaker area had all sorts of resources, such as martial crystals, killing crystals, martial crystal sources, and so on. However, some of the rarer items might not be able to be exchanged even with resources. The sheer number of resources gave Zichen a headache. He had originally thought that there were only a few types of necessary energy. It was said that these purchasing matters were originally handled by Deputy Manager Frank. After Zichen killed Frank, there was no new deputy manager, so it was up to Zichen, the manager, or rather, the hall master, to handle these matters personally. How could Zichen know anything about purchasing? He was a little annoyed. If he had known that the guy would be useful, he would have let him live for a while. Is it very troublesome? Zichen looked at everyone. Everyone did not know how to answer. Maria said, "My lord, it's mainly some trivial matters and registration. It seems a lot, but it's actually not that troublesome. You just have to be careful." Zichen nodded and said, "All right, then I'll leave the purchasing matters to you." Huh. Maria was stunned. The expressions of the others also changed, and when they looked at Maria, there was obvious envy in their eyes. "What's with the huh?" "It's you." Zichen rubbed his forehead and said, "I killed that idiot and got myself into trouble for no reason. You have to bear some responsibility." After that, Zichen turned and went upstairs. "If there's anything you can't handle, come to me. As for the other people and matters, everything will remain the same. You will remain the same as you were before, and so will your remuneration." "Yes." Seeing Zichen go upstairs, everyone immediately nodded in agreement. After Zichen left, someone immediately went to congratulate Maria. Maria blushed and said, "I'm just helping with the purchasing. He didn't make me a deputy palace master, so there's no need to congratulate me. Who doesn't know that the purchasing price is high? Maria, this time, my lord has taken a liking to you and asked you to help. You'll enjoy endless benefits, and when the time comes, don't forget us sisters. Also, you must seize this opportunity. Who knows, you might become a deputy palace master." Hearing her sisters speak, Maria seemed to have thought of something, and her pretty face immediately turned bright red. "What do you mean my lord has taken a liking to me? Although my lord is indeed handsome." "Humph, someone has become a phoenix, but do you really think that purchasing is something that everyone can do?" A mocking voice came from afar. "Keep, what do you mean?" The woman who had brought Zichen upstairs looked at the man who spoke with dissatisfaction. "Do you really think that Frank has nothing to do all day?" The man named Keep mocked. "Then you're too naive. You only see the surface, but you don't see how much he's sacrificed for this matter. If you don't believe me, you'll know once you try." Before it even started, Maria became worried. She felt regret in her heart. If she knew this would happen, she wouldn't have opened her mouth. However, on second thought, the Lord had killed that fellow for her sake, so she should take responsibility for it. After all, her Lord had already taken the biggest responsibility, so what was this small matter? The Hall of Spiritual Spells was the main way for people to exchange for resources, so there were many people who came every day. In less than 2 days, there weren't enough resources, and they needed to go purchase them. Maria took the resources and went to the spirit-breaking place alone. It was said that the reason why this place was called the spirit-breaking place was because the spirit-breaking place suppressed the spirit-breaking place. Obviously, no matter what, the spirit-breaking place wanted to suppress the spirit-breaking place. Zichen stayed in his office these few days. Behind him was his residence, where he could rest. Other than that, there was another residence, but he didn't go back. Maria took the resources and waited outside for 4 hours, but she didn't see the Lord who was distributing the resources. After another 2 hours, she still didn't see him, so she could only bite the bullet and walk in to find him. She found the person, but the resources were gone. That person's attitude wasn't bad, and he asked her to come early tomorrow. Maria, who didn't get anything, caused some dissatisfied voices when she returned. Luckily, the remaining resources could last for about 2 days. The next day, before the sun rose, Maria arrived at the spirit-breaking place. After opening the door, she was the first to enter, but she was told that she didn't have an appointment, so she could only wait outside. Another few hours passed, and when she went in again, she was told that the resources had been distributed, and she had to come early the next day. The attitude was still good, but there was nothing. Maria went for another 2 days, but it was still the same. The things in the Hall of Spiritual Spells were obviously gone, which made the spirit casters very dissatisfied. At the same time, the people in the Hall of Spiritual Spells also expressed their dissatisfaction with her. Some even scolded her, saying that if she couldn't get the resources back, then the Hall of Spiritual Spells shouldn't be opened. But even so, it would affect some customers, causing the business here to be worse than before. Maria, who was scolded by everyone, cried. Helplessly, she could only ask Zichun for help. She knocked on Zichin's door. After entering, she took the initiative to close the door. Why are you here? Zichin smiled and looked at her. Maria pursed her red lips and looked at this handsome lord, thinking that she didn't lose out. Chapter 51:12. A naked body appeared in front of Zichun. This was the first time she had done such a thing. Maria's face was red, like a ripe fruit, very attractive. What are you doing? Hurry up and put it on. Zichin immediately covered his eyes, but it was obviously just for show. His soul power was much clearer. Hurry up, he urged again, very embarrassed. Sir, Maria pursed her lips. Her red cheeks were full of grievance and guilt. If you have something to say it properly. You don't have to do this, Zichin hurriedly said. He tried his best to focus his perception on her cheeks, probing for changes in her expression and not her body. Thinking of her companion's suggestion, Maria was about to move forward again. Sir, some energy pushed Maria back. Zichin pretended to be angry. If you have something to say it first. Otherwise, I will throw you out. Maria couldn't see the change in Zichin's expression because his hand was covering his face. But from his tone, it seemed that he was really angry, so she could only put on her clothes again. Of course, the so-called clothes were just energy. If she was really thrown out, she would die of embarrassment. If you have something to say it properly. Why did you make such a fuss? Who taught you this? Zichin put down his hand and said somewhat speechlessly. Even now, his little heart was still thumping wildly. Sir, Maria put on her clothes and knelt down again. Zichin rubbed his forehead and said speechlessly, I say, can we talk properly first? Maria knelt on the ground and said with a choked voice, Sir, I messed up. Our Hall of Spiritual Law might have to close. The scene of Zichin turning pale with fright or flying into a rage as she had imagined did not happen. Zichin laughed when he heard this. The Hall of Spiritual Law has been open for such a long time and hasn't closed. You think you can close the door in just a few days? All right, get up first and tell me what happened. Maria did not dare to stand up. She just knelt there and told him everything. Zichin was even more speechless when he heard this. So, you listened to other people's advice and did this? Maria's face blushed again. At the same time, she lowered her voice and said, Actually, I did it willingly. Zichin was even more speechless. He pretended not to hear anything. It's not your fault. There's no need to be like this. Get up and come with me. Zichin stood up and stretched his body. He had only been idle for a few days, and now trouble had come knocking on his door. The two of them left this level and headed down. Sir, our resources here. Zichin had just walked downstairs when a man came up to him, ready to report the situation here. Zichin waved his hand. Got it. I'll deal with it right away. Maria led Zichin to the place where the spirit was broken. Along the way, Milia told Zichin some things to pay attention to. When they arrived at the place where the spirit was broken, there were already people there. Zichin was at the back of the line. Finally, Zichin arrived. The man glanced at Zichin, then at Maria. Do you have an appointment? He asked casually. Maria nodded. Yes. Then she took out a list and handed it to the man. She was very nervous the entire time. After looking at the list, the man said casually, You don't have any of these things. Come early tomorrow. Maria looked at Zichun for help. Every time she came here, it was like this. Okay, Zichun said. Then I'll make an appointment tomorrow morning. Okay. The man nodded. Don't I need to show proof? Zichun asked. No need. Just come directly, the man said casually. That's not very good. How would you know if I made an appointment or not? Zichun asked again. I say, can you hurry up? Don't waste our time. Someone in the back said impatiently. Zichun's dilly-dallying made the people in the back of the line unhappy. Zichun looked back at the crowd. Didn't you hear? He said. I don't have any more resources. Come early tomorrow. As he spoke, Zichun turned to look at that person. Don't you agree? The man didn't know how to respond, so he didn't say anything. The others looked at Zichun with disdain. Where did this idiot come from? How could he be so blind? Not only was Zichun blind, he even took out the list and showed it to everyone. If you don't believe me, take a look. I really don't have any more of these things. Come early tomorrow. Maria stood there, looking at her superior. She couldn't help but feel bitter. Her superior was such a valiant man. But now, off, you country bumpkin who hasn't seen the world. One of the people in the line was very impatient. He smashed the list in Zichun's hand, then walked over and took out another list. Damn it, we ran into an idiot. Hurry up. The man picked up the list, glanced at it, and then began to help the other person take his share. Zichun walked over and just watched, not saying anything. After the man had taken all the shares, he stood up and spat viciously at Zichun. Zichun still didn't say anything, but the smile on his face was gone. The people in the back continued forward. The man glanced at the list, then continued to take his share. Zichun put his broken list back together. After the second man left, Zichun walked over. The man in the back was very unhappy. But when Zichun glanced at him, the cursing words he was about to say died in his throat. Zichun put down the list. The man glanced at it, then said with a cold face, Didn't I tell you that there are no more resources today? Come early tomorrow? I'll give you one more chance, said Zichun. Reorganize your words. If you don't know how to reorganize them, then go call the manager out. He should know how to speak better than you. When the man heard this, he immediately became angry. Who the fuck are you? How dare you talk to me like that? He slammed the table and stood up, his eyes flashing with cold, killing intent. Do you want to die? When the others saw this, they immediately retreated. Clearly, there was going to be a good show to watch. They looked at Zichun with ridicule in their eyes. This idiot really hasn't seen the world. Of all the places to cause trouble, he dares to cause trouble here? Isn't he looking to die? Zichun said calmly, Earlier, you said there were no more resources, but you gave me enough for 2 people. So now I'm here to exchange. Who the fuck do you think you are? The man pointed at Zichun's nose. If I want to exchange for you, I'll exchange for you. If I don't want to exchange for you, I won't exchange for you. I've rejected you time and time again to give you face, but you don't know what's good for you. Let me reorganize my words. See? This is what I've organized. Zichun didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. He grabbed the man's collar and pulled him out. You should have said that earlier. The smile on Zichun's face didn't fade. He punched the man's head. Bam! Chapter 51:13. Dong. The impact was so strong that even the spirit breaker area was trembling. When the others saw this, their expressions changed. This guy was too arrogant. He dared to attack at the spirit breaker area. This was the official force of Pofa City, who dared to behave atrociously here. Did he have a death wish? You're dead. The guy who was hit in the head and was dizzy was not afraid at all. He laughed and said, Haha, you're dead. Maria looked at Zichun worriedly. She regretted and blamed herself. It was because of her incompetence that Sir was dragged into this. This was troublesome. Zichun did not say a word and punched the second time. Dong. Ripples spread out, and the spirit breaker area continued to tremble. The aura of this person was obviously getting weaker. Haha, kill me if you can. You're just punching me and not killing me. I look down on you. His face was completely stuck to the ground, but he was still fearless and arrogant. Zichun punched the third time. Dong. The stone floor cracked and spread out like a spider web. Those who were shocked finally came to their senses and shouted at Zichun to stop. Of course, they were only shouting. No one stepped forward at this moment. They just shouted and cheered. Anyway, this guy was going to die anyway. Come on, kill me or I'll look down on you. He was just a 5 forces state cultivator. After he died, there would not be a corpse left, but he still dared to shout at this moment. The reason was that he believed that Zichun would not dare to kill anyone here. Zichun stood up and stopped punching. The guy sat on the ground and spat at Zichun. I looked down on you. What can you do about it? He looked disdainful. Are you trying to scare me? Let me tell you, as long as I'm here, you can forget about exchanging resources. Not even a single one. He then pointed at Maria. Even if you personally put her naked on my bed, I will not exchange it for you. Zichun raised his hand and a ray of light flew past. The guy's arm flew out. He shrieked, How dare you? How dare you do such a thing? Zichun didn't say anything. The second light flashed past his body, and his other arm was gone. He screamed, All right, kill me if you can. Come on. Zichun continued to wave his hand for the third time. His face was still expressionless. One of his opponent's legs was gone, and he fell to the ground unsteadily. Come on, you still have a leg. The other party was still shouting with a ferocious expression. Pooh! In Zichun's hand, light flashed once more. After the last leg left the body, it turned into light and disappeared. Come on, there's still the body. The other party was still shouting. If you have the ability, then separate the body as well. Zichun smiled and said, There's no rush. I'll let you recover for a while before we continue. Wouldn't it be too boring to just die like this? Zichun squatted down, took out a strand of energy, and handed it to him. You can refine it now. The other party mocked. What? Are you afraid that I'm dead? You'll be implicated too? Let me tell you, even if I don't die, you'll die 100 times for attacking me here. The dignity of the spirit-breaking site is not to be trampled on. Zichun said calmly, You're thinking too much. The others looked at this scene in shock, thinking that this guy's guts were a little too big. However, they soon realized where the problem lay. Why didn't anyone come out to stop such a big thing? The other party seemed to have realized this as well, and shouted, Guards, someone is causing trouble here. The surroundings were quiet, and no one responded. Where are the guards? Hurry up and come out. Can't you see that someone is causing trouble? The other party shouted again, his voice extremely loud. In a room upstairs at the spirit-breaking site, a man was leaning against a chair. Of course, he heard the commotion from before, but he didn't go out. In front of him stood a person who was reporting the latest situation. Billy's 4 limbs have been chopped off by someone. Billy is still shouting at the moment. The other party said respectfully, Sir, should we let the guards do something? Do what? Do you want to die? The man said calmly, Even if all of you go, you won't be a match for him. He is? The other party was puzzled. You don't need to know who he is. Since someone is using Billy's hand to cause trouble, let them deal with it themselves. It doesn't matter who lives or dies. But to use someone else to kill someone, do you think I'm stupid? Seeing the change in the other party's expression, the man continued, In order to prevent you from reporting, you will stay here and wait for the results. Cold sweat appeared on the other party's forehead, and he hurriedly said, I don't dare. Where is everyone? Where the hell did they all go? Billy was still shouting, I didn't see them. Did they almost destroy the spirit-breaking site? The surroundings were quiet, and there was still no one around. Guards! Billy was shouting at the top of his lungs, but the fierceness on his face was obviously less. The bystanders were also puzzled. Why was it like this? Zichun kindly reminded him, You need to replenish your life force, or you won't be able to hold on until reinforcements arrive. He kindly gave him a stream of pure energy. Billy didn't say anything and ate it. No matter what, he had to save his life first. As expected of pure energy, his life force quickly recovered. His arm grew out first. At this moment, Zichun continued to attack. With a puff, the arm that just grew out was chopped off again. Billy shrieked, Are you crazy? Why did you attack again? Zichun explained, I only asked you to save your life, not to recover. Billy could only shout again, calling for reinforcements. The onlookers put away their sneers, and their expressions became strange. Until now, no one had come to the spirit-breaking site. This was very strange. Could it be that this person had a powerful background, so no one dared to attack? Milia was also very confused. To her, this should be the most sacred place in Pofa City. No matter if you were a dragon or a tiger outside, you had to lower your head here. This was also the reason why everyone here was so arrogant. She looked around and saw a guard. That guard stood in the distance and didn't come closer. As if he sensed Milia's gaze, he quickly retreated and disappeared. Why didn't he come? After shouting many times, no one came. Billy was a little panicked. "Sir, save me. Someone has disregarded the rules and started a massacre here." Billy could only shout again. Zichun narrowed his eyes. "Could it be this, sir?" "Oomph! What a scandal, what a scandal!" A cold snort was heard, and a person walked out from the depths. He looked at Zichun and said coldly, "How dare you cause trouble here? Men, take him down." Zichun looked at the sir and suddenly laughed. More than 10 people ran out from inside. There were 4th Strength Realm cultivators and 5th Strength Realm cultivators. They immediately attacked Zichun. Buzz! Zichun stood there, motionless. The spirit of massacre turned into a stream of light and swept past everyone's bodies. Then, one by one, the guards' legs were chopped off, and they fell to the ground one by one. Chapter 51:14. Zichun's methods were so terrifying that all the onlookers were stunned. They retreated again and again. The mockery and disdain from before had long disappeared. Billy, whose limbs had been chopped off, fell to the ground. At this moment, he felt that something was wrong. He cried for help, "Sir, save me." At this moment, he was really scared. "You're the one who did this?" Zichun's eyes turned cold as he looked at the 6 Forces Realm cultivator. "What did you say?" The 6 Forces State cultivator said indifferently, "You're causing trouble in the Spirit Breaker area. You're courting death. Guards, this person has disregarded the rules of the Spirit Breaker area and trampled on the dignity of the Spirit Breaker area. Kill him." His shout didn't have any effect at all. Other than those who had lost their legs and were wailing on the ground, no one else came. "Hobson, how dare you? You don't even want to protect the dignity of the Spirit Breaker area?" A hint of anger appeared on the 6 Forces State cultivator's face. A punch came at him. Bam! The 6 Forces State cultivator's body bent like a shrimp. Then, Zichun threw another uppercut. The 6 Forces State cultivator was sent flying. He spat out blood and a few teeth. The 6 Forces State cultivator fell to the ground and continued to shout. However, the other people in the Spirit Breaker area pretended not to hear him. They all pretended to be deaf and mute. From this point, it could be seen that in this place of spirit destruction, it was definitely not a monolithic block of iron. Therefore, Zichun stepped forward and kicked the 6 Forces State cultivator until his face was bruised and swollen. "How dare you trample on the dignity of the Spirit Breaker area?" While the 6 Forces State cultivator was wailing, he did not forget to threaten Zichun. Zichun smiled coldly and started to attack. Poof! One of his arms was gone. He was immediately covered in blood. Compared to Billy, who was in the 5 Forces State, this was much more miserable. The 6 Forces State cultivator recalled Billy's miserable state and immediately had a look of horror on his face. Billy did not have a real body and had lost his limbs. As long as he used pure energy, he would be able to recover quickly. However, he was different. He had a real body. Once his limbs were gone, it would be a serious injury. Even if he used true energy, it would take him a long time to recover. "My lord, save me." The 6 Forces Realm cultivator shouted at the top of his lungs. At this moment, he was also afraid. As for Billy, he was only at the 5 Forces boundary. Originally, he had been relying on this 6 Forces boundary. Who would have thought that things would turn out like this? The others were shocked. Not to mention why the situation had turned out this way. Just the battle prowess of this lord was already very powerful. Pooh! The other arm was gone. From the looks of it, the other 2 legs wouldn't be able to last much longer. The other people who were originally lying on the ground and wailing all sensibly crawled to the side, not daring to block the way. They didn't dare to wail anymore, fearing that Zichun would make an example of them. Stop! Finally, a dignified voice sounded. An old man came and looked coldly at Zichun. You dare to attack me here? How dare you? It was still the same excuse, which was to convict him as soon as he arrived. Zichun said, So, you're the one behind the scenes? The old man was enraged. Impudent. What do you think this place is? Zichun said, A place for trading, a place for exchanging resources. Since you know this, why did you break the rules? You knowingly broke the rules. How should you be punished? The old man's eyes were cold and aggressive. Zichun looked back at Billy and asked, Do you know what this place is? Billy trembled and didn't know how to answer. Zichun answered his own question. This is a place for trading, a place for exchanging resources. This was his answer before, and now he said it again. This made Billy even more confused. What did Zichun mean by telling him this? And you know this, but you deliberately don't give me resources and deliberately make things difficult for me? In your eyes, is there still a place for breaking the spirit? Are there still rules? Facing Zichun's reprimand, Billy's eyes widened, but he didn't know what to say. Breaking the rules knowingly is a crime that even death can't wipe out. Killing intent flashed in his eyes, and the slaughter spirit appeared again. This time, it directly pierced through Billy's head. His attack was sharp and decisive. Billy's eyes widened. He didn't expect that the other party would kill him at this time. He didn't die even after withstanding so much pressure, but now he was dead. He couldn't figure it out. There was no need to think. His body turned into light and dissipated. You're courting death. The old man was furious and rushed towards Zichun. Zichun's face was also filled with anger. This kind of petty person was the most annoying. He directly punched. A powerful force flowed between the fists, and at the same time, the crisscrossing rules appeared. With a huge tremor, Zichun's body slid back. Looking at the old man again, there were 7 types of power around him, releasing a powerful aura. This scene caused quite a commotion. Everyone was incomparably shocked. Zichun looked at the old man and said, I originally thought that you were at least a spellbreaker, but I didn't expect that you were just a spirit spell master. You don't have to thank me for killing a person who deserved to die, although I did it to help the spirit-breaking office. Ignoring the old man's increasingly ugly expression, Zichun looked at the 6th-strength realm cultivator. That guy didn't care about the rules and disregarded the dignity and face of the spirit-breaking office. You, as the master, not only did you not stop him, you even went from bad to worse. Zichun said, Do you know what your actions are called? This is like, the trust and faith that the spirit-breaking office has accumulated over the years was thrown to the ground, and when you came, not only did you not pick it up, you stepped on it and spat on it. Tell me, what's the point of having you at the spirit-breaking office? The slaughter spirit appeared again. You're courting death. The 7th-strength realm cultivator was furious and blocked in front of the slaughter spirit. Zichun smiled coldly, and a light flew out from his sea of consciousness. This was his spellbreaker power. Shwa. Like a sword light, it went straight for the old man. The reason why spellbreakers were superior here was because of their strong and special soul power. Now, the 7th-strength realm cultivator had no choice but to give up blocking the slaughter spirit and form a defensive stance. Poof! He blocked Zichun's attack, but the 6th-strength realm cultivator couldn't. The slaughter spirit directly pierced through his mind. Soul power. He's the shadow destroyer, Zichun. The onlookers finally reacted, and someone immediately exclaimed loudly. As the purchasing staff of the Hall of Spiritual Spells, they rarely came out and had their own place. Although they had never seen Zichun before, they had heard of Zichun's name. Now that they saw a person with 2 types of energy, they immediately guessed his identity. The 6th-strength realm cultivator was dead. As expected of a shadow destroyer, he completely disregarded the rules. The 7th-strength realm cultivator was full of murderous intent. Zichun said indifferently, I'll say the same thing again. No need to thank me. You can disregard the dignity of the spirit-breaking office and even step on it, but I won't. After all, I still have to exchange for resources here. After speaking, Zichun turned to the crowd and said, "Everyone, there are no more resources for today. Come back tomorrow. Of course, when you come back tomorrow, remember to leave my spot empty. After all, I made an appointment in advance, and it's been a few days." Chapter 51:15. With that, Zichun turned and left. No one dared to stop him. The realm of seven strengths wanted to stop him, but he knew his own strength. It would be difficult to kill Zichun now. He could only watch coldly as Zichun left. At the same time, he was thinking of another way. Maria followed behind Zichun. Even though they were far away from the spirit-breaking chamber, she still felt like she was dreaming. He killed someone in the spirit-breaking chamber and left so easily? Inside the spirit-breaking chamber, the others were still looking at each other, not understanding the situation. At this moment, someone finally walked out. "Men, hurry up and take care of the body. This is a place of business. How can there be blood everywhere?" The realm of seven strengths looked back at Hobson and said coldly, "Hobson, someone came to the spirit-breaking chamber to cause trouble and trampled on the dignity of the spirit-breaking chamber. How could you let him go?" The realm of six strengths named Hobson said calmly, "Is that so? How bold. Men, investigate this thoroughly. Once the truth is found, there will be no tolerance." Then he looked at the people standing there. "What are you doing here?" One of them cupped his fist and said, "Sir, we are here to exchange for resources. We haven't exchanged for today's resources yet." "Sir, the matter has been investigated. Under Jimmy's instructions, Billy has targeted Spiritual Spell Hall number 4 time and time again, causing them to be on the verge of closing down. This time, the new hall master personally asked for an explanation, but he was still targeted. That's why he fought." The speaker's voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. It was loud enough for everyone to hear him clearly. In such a short time, the truth had been discovered. Moreover, there was a hidden meaning in his words. Many people reacted in hindsight. Hobson's expression changed when he heard this. "What? Something like this can happen in our spirit-breaking chamber? What kind of situation did you push him into that he would kill someone in anger? Our spirit-breaking chamber has always been fair and just. How can we allow such a person to exist? Kick out all the people who helped the evildoer and never hire them again." "Yes." The person immediately nodded. "How dare you, Hobson?" he cried. "Do you know what you're doing?" The seventh Force Realm cultivator angrily shouted. That guy didn't put the Spirit Breaker department in his eyes at all. He threw the department's face to the ground and kept trampling on it. But you didn't go up and pick it up. You actually trampled on it a few more times. Hobson suddenly raised his hand, and the being stopped. Just when everyone thought that Hobson was going to change his mind, he said, "Remember, when you drive them out, break their legs. Tell them not to be lackeys anymore." "Understood." The person turned around and left. Hobson looked back at the realm of seven forces and said, "I don't care about face. All I know is that the Spirit Breaker office is a place of business, and we must maintain absolute fairness. I don't care what kind of personal grudges you have, or how you want to settle them. I don't care if you fight to the death, but don't use public power for personal gain. It's a pity that the two of them are already dead. Otherwise, I would have let them know the price of using public service for personal gain. I guarantee that I'll make them wish they were dead." At the end of his sentence, Hobson's eyes were filled with cold killing intent. The other people who had come to exchange for resources couldn't help but shiver. It was obvious that this person was truly angry. When Zichun and Maria returned, they saw that many people had gathered at the entrance. These people had all come to exchange for resources, but unfortunately, there were no more resources that they needed. Thus, they were all very dissatisfied and had gathered here to demand an explanation. When they saw that Zichun had returned, they all looked at Zichun. Many of these people recognized Zichun, and their expressions all changed. When the people in the Hall of Spiritual Spells called out "Hall Master," their expressions changed even more. They clearly hadn't expected that Zichun would come here. Zichun looked at the crowd and said, "Everyone, there's been a small incident. At the latest, all the resources will be back in the day after tomorrow." Without waiting for anyone to ask, Zichun said, "Of course, it could also be tomorrow. If you want to wait patiently, You can come back tomorrow to exchange for resources. I'll give you a 5% discount on all the resources." This discount was very attractive. After all, the Hall of Spiritual Spells always had a fixed price. "What if the resources don't come back tomorrow?" someone asked worriedly. Zichen smiled and said, "Then come back the day after tomorrow. I'll give everyone a 10% discount." This made everyone suck in a breath of cold air. This discount was absolutely unprecedented. For a moment, everyone hoped that the resources wouldn't come back tomorrow. Then, the day after tomorrow, they would have a shocking price. As the hall master, Zichun naturally had the absolute right to speak and set the price. Even if the others had some complaints, they didn't dare to say anything. "Call me tomorrow morning. We'll go again." Zichun looked at Maria, and the latter nodded repeatedly. Zichun went back upstairs. Maria continued working. Some colleagues came over to ask what had happened. After Maria told them everything, everyone was very surprised. For many years, they had never heard of anyone who dared to make a move in the spirit-breaking area and was able to escape unscathed. The next day, as soon as the sky brightened, Maria came to call Zichun. The two of them were the first to arrive at the spirit-breaking area. During this time, the door was closed. After a while, other people came. When they saw Zichun in front of them, Zichen's face changed. They had already heard about what had happened yesterday, and that existence who had spat at Zichen before, after hearing that Zichen had killed someone, was so scared that he didn't dare to come today. The door opened. Zichun and Maria walked in. A newcomer was standing there. Maria immediately went forward and took out the list that she had made last night. The newcomer looked at the list and then looked at Zichun. Zichun didn't say anything. He just looked behind him. If he couldn't get the resources today, these people wouldn't be able to get them either. If someone else targeted him, then he didn't mind continuing to attack. After all, he had the right of reason. Wait a moment. The newcomer didn't make things difficult for him. After saying that, he quickly left. Maria, who had been very nervous, let out a sigh of relief. At the very least, this was much better than she had been in the past. The newcomer took the list and went to look for Hobson. In the end, he was scolded by Hobson. "You're here to exchange resources. Now that you don't give them to others, you want to die? If you want to die, then die far away. Don't drag me down with you. Damn it, did you forget those two from yesterday?" Under Hobson's curses, the other party went back down and returned with all sorts of resources. Looking at the resources, Maria was so happy that she almost cried. The Hall of Magic could be maintained. Zichen didn't say much. Since the people at the spirit-breaking area wanted to pretend that nothing had happened yesterday, he didn't mind. Everything was back on track, that's all. So when Maria returned with the resources, everyone saw the smile on her face and couldn't smile. Because if the goods came tomorrow, there would be a 10% discount. Maria smiled. "My lord said that although the resources have come back, there will still be a 5% discount tomorrow." Zichun returned to his residence. In his heart, he wondered if he should find a deputy hall master. Chapter 51:16. With that thought in mind, Zichun decided to take action. He left his residence and went to find Kant. He told him why he was here. "You want me to be the deputy manager?" Kant was stunned. He had only just found out that Zichun was going to be the manager of the Hall of Spiritual Spells. He was surprised at that time. Why would a spell breaker be so bored? "You can also call me deputy manager," Zichun said. "Don't think that you can't do it just because you have a high position. I believe in you." Kant's mouth twitched. He was a 6 Forces state spellbreaker. He was qualified to be a manager. Deputy manager? A high position? But looking at the person in front of him, he decided not to argue. First of all, he couldn't argue. After all, Zichun was the reason why he could reach the 6 Forces state. Second, he had argued with Zichun and his friends before. In the end, none of them got the upper hand. Why? Although he didn't argue, he still wanted to know the reason. Why did the Hall of Spiritual Spells need a 6 Forces state spellbreaker to be the deputy manager? "Since I'm the manager, I have to manage it well." Zichun's words made Kant smile. With Zichun's combat power, he could reap a lot of benefits just by going outside the city. Why would he care about such a small amount of resources? "You don't want to?" Zichen looked at Kant. Kant quickly stopped smiling. I'm happy. I'm happy. Then, Zichen led Kant to the Hall of Spiritual Spells. As they walked, Zichen said, You're a spellbreaker. No matter your identity or position, you should have a high position. So, I'll leave the purchasing task to you. Kant nodded silently. When they arrived at the Hall of Spiritual Spells, he was surprised to see so many people. It seemed that business was very good. I gave them a 5% discount. After all, they've been waiting for a few days, Zichen said. Kant glanced at Zichen. He seemed to understand Zichen's intention. After Zichen introduced Kant to everyone was stunned. A six-forces realm lawbreaker came here to be a deputy hall master? Normally, he might not be willing to be the hall master, right? The face of this palace master was simply too big. But while they were shocked, some people also subconsciously looked at Maria. Previously, everyone thought that Maria would become the vice palace master. After all, she had always been in charge of purchasing, although she had never completed the task. Zichen led Khan upstairs. It seems like some people's hopes of flying to the top have been dashed. In the end, they are still nothing more than chickens. Someone sneered. Keep, what do you mean? Immediately, a woman said in dissatisfaction, Nothing much. I'm just saying that not everyone can become a vice palace master. Coupe smiled coldly and turned to leave. Maria was so angry that her eyes turned red, but she couldn't refute. She could only sulk by herself. She had never thought of becoming a vice palace master. She just wanted to repay the Lord and do something for him. After arriving at Zichen's office, Kant sat down and asked, It's just a small place. What do you plan to do? Help run the business better. If the big shots inside take a fancy to me, they might take me deeper. In the past, Zichen didn't even dare to dream of going deeper. But now, it was different. He had advanced to the Six Forces realm. Next, it was very likely that he would reach the Seven Forces realm, the Eight Forces realm, or even the Nine Forces realm. Therefore, he had to think about things that he didn't think about before. Whether or not he could go back, he had to go deeper and find out. And this Hall of Spiritual Spells was an opportunity. What do you plan to do? Kant asked again. The profit of the various resources in the Hall of Spiritual Spells is about 10%. I will lower it a little here, but the main thing is the spirit-breaking section. I hope you can go and negotiate with them so that the purchase price can be lower. This was a plan that Zichen had thought of long ago. As long as the price was lowered, he would lower the price accordingly. The business would be very good. And when the business was good, the total profit would naturally increase. I don't have the ability to do that. I don't know anyone there. Kant smiled bitterly. No rush. You can go and buy for a while. We'll talk about it when you're familiar with it. Zichen said, During this time, I will also go to the other halls of spiritual spells to take a look. Okay. The two of them settled down for the time being. Because of the discount, business was very good. The next day, Maria took the list and brought Kant to the spirit-breaking section. During this time, Maria was very nervous. Because spirit breakers were born to be superior and were said to be difficult to deal with, she was silent the whole time. Occasionally, Kant would ask some questions, and she would answer whatever he asked. She would not say a word more. Kant thought that she was just so cold, so he did not say anything more. When it came to the exchange of resources, there were no problems. Kant stood to the side and watched. It was just that many people looked at him strangely, because Kant did not hide the aura of the spirit breakers, for fear that others would not know. This was also Zichen's intention. Zichen said that when they were outside, especially at the spirit-breaking section, they should not be stingy with their identity. Sure enough, just as the two of them were about to leave, a person came up to them. My master invites you. Do you have time? The person bowed respectfully to Kant. Kant nodded slightly, then said to Maria, You go back first. Don't wait for me. Maria immediately bowed and left. Kant followed the person upstairs. Hobson did not dare to be careless and stood at the stairs to welcome them. Lord Spirit Breakers, why have you come to my spirit-breaking section? Hobson was also in the Six Powers state, but he was a spirit caster. Even though he had a high status, he did not dare to put on airs in front of Kant. Zichen was not here. If he saw this scene, he would probably regret it to death. If he had known that this would happen, he would have called Khan over directly. Why would he have gone through so much trouble? I am the new deputy manager of the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Today, I am here to learn how to make purchases. Oh, you should know about the Hall of Spiritual Spells. My master is called Zichan. Hobson was shocked, but he did not show it on his face. He immediately smiled and said that he knew, and that there was some misunderstanding between them. After that, Hobson invited Kangda into his room. While the two of them were chatting, Hobson casually brought up the grudge that had happened in the past. It turned out that a person called Corpy came to find Billy and told him about the situation at the Hall of Spiritual Spells. For example, Frank was killed and an insensible girl was in charge. Kant heard this and said, I didn't know much about this place before, so I don't understand. Everyone is doing business. Why would Billy stand up for someone else? Could there be other interests involved? Hobson looked at Kant with an awkward expression, as if he was hesitating about whether to say it or not. Lord, you can just tell me the truth. After all, I am also a businessman, Kant said with a smile. It seemed that Hobson was flattered by being called Lord. He said 2 words, commission. Kant smiled. Zichan had predicted this. Chapter 51:17. In front of the Hall of Spiritual Spells, there was a 3rd strength state cultivator who had just been thrown out. A 4th strength state woman walked out and looked down at him. Why don't you take a look at where you are? You're just a 3rd strength state cultivator and you dare to cause trouble here? I'll spare your life today. If there's a next time, I'll definitely kill you. A 3rd strength state cultivator could walk from the outside to the inside of the city. To outsiders, Pofa City was like heaven. However, when they arrived here, they realized that a 3rd strength state cultivator could barely survive. Only a 4th strength state cultivator would have a slightly better life. In fact, there were many 3rd strength state cultivators here. His aura was very weak. It seemed that he did not have much life left. In this place, energy was life. When people passed by and saw the 3rd strength state cultivator, their eyes flashed with disdain. As for pity, there was no such thing as pity. This was a place where the strong preyed on the weak. Zichun had seen too many people like this. Otherwise, he would not have been targeted time and time again. He walked forward and stood in front of the 3rd strength state cultivator. The 3rd strength state cultivator slowly raised his head and looked at Zichun. His face was pale. His life could disappear at any time. Sir, I want to exchange. He slowly raised his hand. Zichun saw that he was holding a black crystal in his hand. There were no energy waves on it. It looked like an ordinary ore. He did not know where it came from. I want to exchange for 10 strands of energy. The 3rd strength state cultivator's aura was very weak. His life could disappear at any time. However, the price for this stone was not low. Zichun smiled and said, let's forget about the deal. He left behind 3 strands of energy and then turned to leave. The 3rd strength state cultivator looked at the 3 strands of energy and then looked at Zichun, who was leaving. In this area, excluding the Hall of Spiritual Spells that Zichun was in, there were 7 other halls. Other than that, there were 4 Pofa halls. Zichun went to a Pofa hall along the way. Most of the people there were Pofa breakers. Hence, the atmosphere was very harmonious. As for the Hall of Spiritual Spells, there were all kinds of conflicts. In just one day, Zichun saw 3 cases of people being chased away. Other than the first case of a person in the 3-strength realm, the other 2 cases were all in the 4-strength realm. Zichun walked into the Hall of Spiritual Spells and looked at some resources. He didn't show any intention of exchanging them, so the woman who was leading the way started to mock him. In the end, he simply ignored Zichun. Obviously, he thought that a pauper had come. As the hall master, Zichun knew that these people would receive an additional commission for every transaction, and the ratio would be determined according to the amount of the transaction. Back in the Hall of Spiritual Spells, Kant had also returned. This time, he had gained a lot. He had learned a lot of secrets, and he had told Zichun everything. And keeps matter. What do you plan to do? After that, Kant looked at Zichun. Zichun thought for a moment and said, although he doesn't deserve death, we can't just let him go. Drive him away. Kant glanced at Zichun and didn't say anything. Actually, if it were up to him, he would have just slapped him to death in front of everyone. After all, he was in the right. If he let this guy live, it would be a disaster. However, since Zichun had spoken, Kant could only do as he was told. So, he walked downstairs and asked, "Who is Keep?" Everyone looked at Keep subconsciously. Keep hurried forward and said, "My lord, I am Keep." Kant glanced at him and said, "You can get lost now." Keep was stunned. What was going on? "If you don't get lost, you will die." Kant sneered and said, "This is Lord Zichin's idea. He is kind. If it were me, colluding with outsiders and harming the interests of the Hall of Spiritual Spells, you would have died 800 times. Keep's face immediately turned pale. He obviously knew what Kant was talking about. Now, facing the cold stare of a 6-strength state breaker, he didn't dare to say anything. He took the item and left. At the door, a 3-strength state cultivator walked in and said that he wanted to exchange for resources. After everyone took a look, they all shook their heads. Some of them didn't even give him a good look. He was really audacious. He was just a 3-strength state cultivator. How dare he use a piece of broken stone to deceive them? Speaking of which, they weren't chased out on the spot because they restrained themselves. It was also because the boss here had just changed. The next day, Zichun went to the Hall of Spiritual Spells again. The result was not much different from the previous day. It seemed that people were being chased out every day. Indeed, in such a big Dharma breaker city, there were only a few shops in total. Then, Zichun found something very interesting. The 3-strength state cultivator from the previous day didn't give up. He took the stone and went to one shop after another. After he was chased out, he went to the next one. Speaking of which, Zichun had a whole new level of respect for his persistence. Just for the 10-strength state? Finally, after the other party hit a wall again, Zichun walked in front of him. When the other party saw Zichun, surprise flashed in his eyes. Then, he respectfully called out, "Lord." If it was someone else, they wouldn't have noticed this 3-strength state cultivator. Only Zichun had been wandering around these shops, so he could always see him. "What is that black stone?" Zichun asked. The other party shook his head and said, "We don't know, but it's definitely not simple." Zichun said again, "Are you sure it's not simple? You've already visited these 12 shops and let many people see it." "How do you know, Lord?" The other party looked at Zichun. "Coincidentally, I've been observing the business of these halls of spiritual spells recently. That's why I always see you." Yesterday's encounter was the same. Hearing Zichun's words, the other party's expression became depressed. He thought that Lord had discovered the value of this black stone. "Since we're fated, I'll give this black stone to you, Lord." The other party sighed. "Perhaps this is really a very ordinary item." Zichun took the black stone and looked at it carefully. Indeed, there was nothing unusual about it. "There's a limit to how hard this thing is. It can't be used to refine weapons." Zichun tried to pinch it, then shook his head. Then, he used his energy to sense it, but there was still nothing unusual. Then, Zichun tried to use his soul power. The black stone lit up. When the other party saw this, he still looked depressed. As for the light on the black stone, he didn't care. He thought that it was the light from Zichun's palm. After all, many people had tried it in the past few days. Zichun asked, "Where did you get this thing? How did you determine that it's worth 10 strands of energy?" The other party said honestly, "Lord, it was in an abandoned mine. It was once controlled by the spellbreakers. It was a place where soul stones were produced. But after the ore was mined, it was abandoned. Then, we dug this out from the depths." At the end of his words, the other party scratched his head. "So, we think that it's extraordinary and worth 10 strands of energy." Zichun laughed when he heard this. "I want this stone." He took out 10 strands of energy in exchange. Chapter 51:18. The man was stunned. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. After all, he had failed so many times that he had decided to give up. He had never thought that he would finally complete a deal. After the deal was done, Zichun turned around and was about to leave. "Sir." The man hesitated and then shouted, "Sir, Amici, I have a lot of these stones." Then, he looked at Zichun expectantly. Zichun furrowed his brows and looked troubled. Michi was very nervous. He had thought that Lin Fan had made the deal because he had recognized the value of the stones. Of course, he wasn't sure if the stones were valuable or not. How many do you have? Zichen asked. I have a few hundred stones now, and in the mine, Michi was too embarrassed to continue. After all, he hadn't found the value of the stones yet. Zichen thought for a while and said, How about this? If you only want to trade those few hundred stones, then I'll trade with you according to the price you mentioned. If you want to continue mining, then I won't ask for this price. I'll cut it in half at least. Michi suddenly widened his eyes and said excitedly, Sir, what did you say? You said that you're willing to buy enough stones from the mine? Zichen nodded and said, Yes, it's enough with 5 forces. Also, if you want to trade for a long time, these few hundred stones will also be worth 5 forces. Yes, of course. Michi nodded excitedly. Then, he said guiltily, to be honest, it's okay to give these few hundred stones to you. It's just that my brothers can't hold on any longer. So, Zichen smiled and said, It's okay. I don't have any ordinary forces now. Come with me. I'll give you the forces. Then, you can bring the stones there to trade. As for the Hall of Spiritual Spells, Zichen had already seen everything and had a preliminary plan in his heart. So, it was time to go back. Michi followed behind Zichen. He had never been so excited before. He had thought that everything was in vain. He didn't expect that there would be a glimmer of hope. Following Zichen to the Hall of Spiritual Spells, Michi saw the service staff calling him Lord. Only then did he realize what kind of status Zichen had. Then, he saw Zichen holding the stone and tossing it to a service staff member, saying, Put it on the shelf. The price is 8 strands of strength. The other party took it and asked, Sir, what is this? Zichen thought for a moment and said, Let's call it black crystal. I don't know what it is for now. Hearing this, Mickey was very disappointed. It seemed that even his master did not know what this thing was for. Then, Zichen asked someone to take out 500 streams of power and give it to Mitch first. When Michi wanted to thank him, he found that his master was gone. He was deeply moved. These few hundred strands of power were given to him just like that? Isn't my lord afraid that I'll run away with the power? However, when he looked at the place there, he shook his head and smiled. His lordship had obviously taken it back as trash. This made him feel very embarrassed. Zichen walked up the stairs. The power contained in the stone was actually the power of the Shadow Destroyer. In the entire Dharma-breaking city, only Zichen knew the value of this stone. To other people, it was worthless. But to Zichen, not to mention 10 streams of power, even if it was 100, he would buy it. The reason why he did not give a high price was because of human nature. In this world, the strong preyed on the weak. Once he raised the price, not to mention what Michi would do, his companions could also guess the value of this stone. Then, he would naturally contact other people. Of course, the others could not see the value of this stone, but it did not stop them from buying it. As a result, the price of this stone had been rising for Zichen. Sometimes it was not wrong to be kind, but it did not mean that all kind people were fools. Kant came back and happened to see the two sides trading. He stepped forward and took out a stone to sense it carefully. There was nothing strange. He said with a surprised face, Are you sure that the hall master asked you to collect enough? Hearing this, Michi looked anxious. Could it be that things had changed? The salesperson immediately nodded, then pointed at the stone beside him and said, Sir, put another stone on it. The price is 8 streams of power. Kant took a look. It was indeed so. Then he did not say anything else and walked upstairs. When Michi left, he insisted on 10 streams of power because he had said that the stone was for Sir. Kant went to find Zichen and told him that the matter was settled. He could give him a 5% discount on the original price. This way, even if Zichen kept the 5% discount, the profit would be the same as before. With this price, if the quantity is large, there will still be a discount. But this needs to be discussed later. Kant said, Right, the stone you received should have other uses, right? What do you mean? Zichen looked at Kant. Kant said, If it was trash, would you take it back? Zichen smiled and did not give any response. This made Kangda mutter to himself. Could it really be a piece of junk? After Michi took the rest of the power back, Everyone was very excited. At least they did not have to worry about survival. After the excitement died down, a bearded man said, "Say, do you think this thing is really a rare good thing?" Everyone looked at the bearded man. The bearded man said, "Think about it. No one wants it except this person. Could it be that he saw the value and purposely lowered the price?" "Impossible," Michi said. "You didn't see that Sir only put it on sale in the store. It's only 8 streams of power." The bearded man continued, "Maybe it's just a trick? After all, those people are too sneaky. If it's really priceless, won't we be cheated?" "Then what do you think we should do?" Michi asked. "Go and discuss with that person. See if you can raise the price to 10 streams of power," the bearded man said. "Then I'll know if it's valuable or not." "Are you crazy? Sir said before that if there are only a few hundred pieces, we can buy 10 streams of power. But the transaction is limited to one time. If we want more in the future, we can buy 5 streams of power. This is long-term." Michi stared at the bearded man. "I say, do and I. Don't tell me you want me to go back on my words?" The bearded man said, "Fine, we don't have much say now. Wait until we accumulate enough power, then we'll talk about it. Right, during this time, don't be idle. Continue to ask other stores and see if they want it. If they don't want it, I've gone many times. This time is different. You can say that one store has bought enough. If they don't want it, others won't be able to buy it. Naturally, they won't come to their store." "I'm not going." Michi shook his head and said, "I'm going to mine. If you want to go, go by yourself." Chapter 51:19. 2 days later, Michi came with 400 crystals. This time, he exchanged them for 2,000 strands of energy. According to Big Beard's instructions, he had to see how the ore was selling, but he didn't see it at first glance. His heart skipped a beat. Could it really be a good thing? Was it just for show? So he asked how the crystals were selling yesterday. The salesperson pointed to the corner and said, "It's all there." It turned out that they were all there, and there were almost 100 of them. They were priced at 8 strands of energy each. No one was interested. At the same time, Big Beard took the crystals and went to the other halls of spiritual law. But without exception, they were all kicked out. Even if he told them that the other halls of spiritual law were collecting enough, they were still kicked out mercilessly. Big Beard was very depressed. He reluctantly went to all the halls of spiritual law. As for the Broken Law Hall, he didn't go. He was afraid that those who didn't follow the rules would beat him to death. When he came back, he asked Michi how it was. Michi told him that there were more than 100 crystals in the corner that no one was interested in. Then Michi asked Big Beard how it was. Big Beard shook his head and sighed. In the room, Zichin took out an ore and tried to refine it. Only by using the power of the Shadow Destroyer could he feel that it was extraordinary. As expected, with the guidance of the power of the Shadow Destroyer, the energy inside was divided into 2 and absorbed by Zichin. It actually took him 2 hours to refine this piece of crystal, which made him very surprised. Of course, it also proved that the crystal was very valuable. In Zichin's hand, the crystal that had lost its energy turned into powder and disappeared. Zichin didn't take the crystals immediately. He had other considerations. On the 3rd day, the discount went back to normal, which made many people feel regretful. After all, a 5% discount was very worthwhile for them. Zichin still went out to check the situation in the other halls of spiritual law. Almost every day, he saw people being kicked out. Of course, he also saw people taking black ores to the shops and being kicked out. Seeing this, Zichin just smiled faintly and pretended not to see it. A few days later, Zichin estimated that it was about time and released the news that there would be a 10% discount in the Hall of Spiritual Spells in 7 days. Once this news came out, it immediately caused quite a stir. After all, such a discount was unprecedented in history. The other spiritual spell halls were also alarmed. However, they didn't have much of a reaction. There were only so many halls of magical spells in Shattering Lost City. Everyone would buy what they needed from the nearest hall of magical spells. Even if there was a discount, how long could it last? In the end, he still had to come back. They really disdained this kind of catcalling. Apart from the loss of his own interests, there were no other benefits. However, They could also predict that in the next few days, business would naturally not be good, or even very bad. In order to prevent such a thing from happening, a hall master of a hall of spiritual spells suddenly came up with an idea. He asked everyone who came here to spend an extra 10 strands of energy to buy an identity badge here. With this identity token, one would be able to shop normally in this place. Otherwise, one would have to spend 10% more. One was an unprecedented 10% discount, while the other was a 10% increase in price. It didn't seem like a difficult choice. There were even some people who were cursing the profiteers. However, right after that, the other halls of spiritual spells followed suit. 10 strands of energy for one identity badge. Otherwise, the price would be increased by 10%. This made many people complain. They even started to complain about Zichen's discount. There were also some people who said that this was a scheme that both sides had discussed long ago. For example, the price of the item would be increased first, and then a discount would be given. In fact, the price would be the same as the normal price. However, this way, they would lose the money to buy identity badges. Luckily, from the looks of it, Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells didn't have any intention of selling identity badges. This made everyone feel a little bit better. However, there were also some people who thought that this was something that would happen sooner or later. In fact, the 8 halls of spiritual spells had already discussed it. It seemed like a price reduction, but in fact, it was a disguised price increase. After Zichen heard the news, he was happy. These people were really relying on their big businesses and didn't care about small profits. In this way, they could also get their own identity badges. In these few days, Zichen asked Khan to stock up more, especially those that were often sold. He wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be a shortage. After Hobson found out about Zichen's activities, he originally gave a 5% discount. Now, he gave a 3% discount. Michi came again with the crystals. This time, the person in charge of the exchange was Maria. In fact, she was on the second floor and didn't need to use her for such a small matter. When she found out that Master Zichen wanted to exchange for the crystals, she came. She knew very well that there was no profit in this kind of exchange. The others were too lazy to accept it. They just didn't dare to say it. While Maria was counting the resources, Michi asked carefully, "How are these things selling?" Maria smiled. Michi also smiled awkwardly. Then, he asked, "What are you doing with these crystals?" "Currently, they are in the warehouse," Maria said. "When the warehouse is full, I will ask Master Zichen and see what he wants." "Master Zichen?" Michi was surprised. "Which Master Zichen?" Maria smiled. "How many Master Zichen are there in Pofa City?" Michi was really shocked. Then, he sighed. I see. He came from the outside. His previous superiors were Miao Pengfei and Hu Zheng. Naturally, he had heard of Zichen's name. If Zichen hadn't changed the situation outside, it would have been almost impossible for them to reach the 3 strengths realm. No wonder his lordship wanted these ores. Only his lordship would do such a thankless task. Up until now, Mitch had completely confirmed that those ores were very ordinary things. As for why Master would do such a thankless thing, it was because Master was kind. There were many rumors about this in the outside world, and there were many in this place as well. Before leaving, Michi asked, "Can we participate in the 10% discount?" Of course, everyone can, including us. Everyone was looking forward to it, including the staff. After all, they needed resources too. That day finally came. Early in the morning, there was already a long line outside. Not to mention whether it was a scheme to raise the price. At least the 10% discount today was real. No one wanted to miss out on such a bargain. The door of the Hall of Magic opened, and a man walked out. It was Zichen. He looked at the people waiting outside and said, "Everyone, I heard that the other shops are selling jade plates. We can use this opportunity to sell jade plates." In the crowd, many people's faces changed. Selling jade plates was obviously not a good thing. Zichen said, "Because of the big discount today, if you want to buy a jade plate, you can buy one with an extra 10 streams of energy if you spend more than 500 streams of energy. As for those who don't have enough energy but want to buy one, you need to spend 30 streams of energy to buy one." Immediately, there was an uproar. Someone questioned, "Why do you need 30 when everyone else has 10? Chapter 51:20. Once Ziqin's words came out, it immediately caused a huge uproar. They were all jade pendants, but the other 8 shops sold them at the same price. 10% off here? For a moment, everyone couldn't believe that this was real. How could there be such a good thing? If you buy a jade pendant, the price today will be the same in the future, Ziqin said. As for whether you want to buy a jade pendant, it's up to you. We won't force you. After that, Ziqin turned and walked in, leaving the door to the crowd. Everyone immediately entered. In fact, they were still very nervous because they weren't sure if there was something fishy about the price. But after entering, the price was clear. There was nothing fishy. Nothing at all. Everyone became excited one by one. There were even some people who didn't buy anything and planned to buy a jade card first, in case of an emergency. Big Beard and Michi also walked in. With their strength, they could only see a few things. But even so, they were still shocked. Everything was 10% off, including the black crystals they dug up. The two of them stood aside and looked for a long time, but no one showed any interest in the black crystals. Soon, the place was overcrowded. The two of them were squeezed out. This business is too good. The two of them were very emotional. Fortunately, it would last for a few more days, so they weren't in a hurry to buy resources. There were many people going in and out of the door. Some were going to buy resources, and some were going to pass the news back. After all, this was a discount that had never happened before. Let's go and dig up more crystals. The use of the jade pendant in Ziqin's shop spread quickly. When the other 7 halls of spiritual law heard about it, they snorted. Obviously, they didn't believe it. There was no business in the world like this. 10% off? Wouldn't they lose money? Did they really think that the Hall of Spiritual Law was their own business? Since they didn't care, they didn't say anything. Some of them even arrogantly said that only those with jade pendants could buy things at the same price. Otherwise, they would raise the price by 10%. This led to the business of the Hall of Spiritual Law that Ziqin was in becoming more and more popular. Because of this, Kant couldn't handle it alone. Ziqin introduced Milia to him. Kant went to look for Hobson again, this time for Wu Jingshi. In this spirit-breaking place, there were martial crystals, but ordinary people were not qualified to get a share, unless they were from the spell-breaking palace. After Hobson learned of the situation, he gave Kant the share without hesitation. Maria took the martial crystals to the first floor and set the price at 10,000 Dao force per piece. This immediately caused a sensation. Under normal circumstances, the Hall of Spiritual Spells would not provide martial crystals, as they were extremely rare and were the best choice for increasing one's cultivation. 10,000 strands of energy seemed to be a very high price, but after it was displayed, it was swept clean by people. Of course, the real price was 9,000 Dao energy per piece, and the discount was real. When the people from the other shops heard about this, they were all stunned. If that was the case, where would the profits be? Finally, they gritted their teeth. After 5 days, the 10% discount was gone. Just as these people were waiting for everything to return to normal, they realized that business was still not improving. The number of people who came every day was pitifully small. In addition, they implemented a trading model without a jade token to increase the price by 10%. So many people left. The business of Ziqin's Hall of Spiritual Spells was still very good, but this time, the people who came had jade pendants, and they still had a 10% discount. As for those who did not have jade pendants, they could get one in time, but the price this time was 100 Dao force. In this way, another half a month passed. When the other shops felt the crisis and finally reacted, Ziqin's business had already taken shape. If they allowed the 10% discount, they would definitely lose money. As for going to cause trouble, when they thought of the hall master's name, they all gave up. Ziqin even dared to kill a 6 forces realm spellbreaker, so who would dare to cause trouble for him? After a month passed like this, they finally grew anxious. They sat together and began to discuss how to deal with Ziqin in the future. Why don't we get someone to put on a show and say that his things are fake, and that's why the price is so low? As soon as this idea came out, it was rejected. Everyone gathered resources in the same place. If Ziqin's things were fake, then theirs were fake too. Naturally, no one agreed with this rotten idea. How about this? Doesn't he want to lower the price? One of them sneered. Then let's have a price war. He gives a 10% discount, we give a 15% discount. I don't believe we won't be popular. Michael, are you crazy? 15% discount? We'll lose money. Immediately, one person expressed strong dissatisfaction. 15% discount is only temporary. We can use an extremely high price to get everyone to come and get some jade pendants. When everyone comes back, we'll set the price again. Of course, we'll have the final say on the price. The person named Michael sneered. Zichen's battle power is not bad, but he's obviously still too inexperienced to compete with the 7 halls of spiritual spells. One person frowned. Then how long do we have to hold on? 1 day, 2 days. We definitely can't hold on. Michael said, half a month, or at most a month. Zichen's shop will definitely close. At that time, we can set the price however we want. Everyone exchanged glances. Although there would be some losses, if the 7 shops split the losses, they would still be able to bear it. And so, they did as they were told. First, they spread the news, intentionally creating hype. Then, they said that 3 days later, there would be a 15% discount. The news quickly spread to Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells. When Zichen heard it, he smiled calmly. Don't worry, they won't be able to hold on for much longer. Zichen had comp by his side. Based on the other party's purchase price, there was a 90% chance that they would still make a profit. Thus, they weren't worried at all about these people messing around. Furthermore, the longer they held on, the greater the losses they would suffer. This was purely a method of killing 800 enemies and losing 1,000 of your own. In response, Zichen didn't say anything. He allowed the other party to give him a discount. In fact, on the day of the opening, he didn't even go to check on the situation. According to Milia, the 7 shops were doing very well. After all, the discounts were low. But unlike Zichen, if everyone wanted to participate in this event, they had to spend 200 Dao energy to buy a jade plaque. And this jade plaque could be used in all 7 shops at the same time. It could be said that as long as one bought a jade plaque, they would be able to enjoy a 15% discount in all 7 shops in the future. Naturally, everyone was happy to do such a good thing. Even if it cost 200 Dao energy at the beginning, many people still gritted their teeth and did it. After all, this was a matter of lifelong profit. After hearing Milia's words, Zichen immediately said, everyone else can do as you wish. But you are not allowed to go there to get a jade plaque. And no one else in the shop is allowed to go there either. Chapter 51:21. Milia had been shopping with Kant recently. Of course, she knew the real price of some resources. Even if they were here, they wouldn't be able to make any profit, let alone those people. Kant had asked Hobson about the prices of those people, but Hobson told him that it was the same as before. Therefore, the 7 halls of spiritual law were doing this to cheat people. As for the purpose, it was very simple. They wanted to shut down Zichen's hall of spiritual law. Time passed day by day. Zichen's business was getting worse and worse. Only a few people came here every day. Most of them couldn't afford the expensive tokens. They only came here to exchange for 1 or 2 strands of energy. Other than that, there were also some people who came here almost every other day. The resources they bought were all normal. In other shops, they could buy them at a 15% discount. One day, after exchanging for black crystals with Michi, she saw a familiar customer and asked curiously why he didn't go to other shops. It was obviously cheaper. In the end, the customer's answer stunned Milia. Then, she felt warm in her heart. He said, I don't want to see this place close, so I'm doing my best. She told this small matter to the master. After Zichen heard it, he smiled and said, so, you have to do well. Don't let those people down. Half a month had passed. Zichen's business was still not doing well. However, he wasn't in a hurry. He stayed in his room every day and didn't care about these trivial matters. Kant, the deputy hall master, hadn't appeared for a long time. Recently, the number of purchases had obviously decreased. Also, there weren't many, so they were all given to Milia. Every time Milia went there, she would be ridiculed. She pretended not to hear it. Michi gave all the crystals he mined to Zichen. During this time, Big Beard hinted that he could raise the price appropriately. Michi refused because no one was buying. In fact, he didn't understand why the master wanted to take these crystals. Moreover, they didn't seem to have any use. It was said that after the storehouse was full, they were all put away. During this period of time, the bearded man attempted to find the 7 shops a second time. However, this time, he was almost beaten to death. After another 10 days, Zichun said, "Everyone, thank you for your hard work during this period of time. The Hall of Magic will be closed for the next 10 days. After that, it will open again." As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression changed. Are they really going to close? Zichun smiled and said, "Don't worry, I'm just letting everyone rest. I'll still distribute the rewards for the next 10 days. You will be busy in 10 days, so don't miss it while you're free." Zichun took the ring containing the black crystal stones and took away all of them. When she was about to leave, Maria was told that she didn't want to go out because some people would come to buy things. Zichun smiled and said, "If you don't want to relax, you can stay here and guard the store." Then, he left Pofa City and went deep into the forest. Now, he was very sure that the black crystal contained the power of the Shadow Destroyer, and only he could sense it. Now, he wanted to take the crystals to show the other Shadow Destroyers if they could use them. Entering the forest, Zichun went deep into the forest quickly. Along the way, he would kill any spell-breaking beasts he encountered. He went deep into the forest and came to the entrance. Zichun hesitated for a moment, then walked in. He wasn't stopped. After entering, he saw the people waiting on the Black Mountain. Seeing Zichun come back, they were very surprised and immediately ran over. They still couldn't speak, but Zichun could already understand what they were trying to say. They were all very happy. After hearing the news, the old man walked out of the Black Mountain. "Zichun, why are you back?" Zichun took out the black stone and let them try to see if they could absorb the power inside. Everyone was puzzled, but they still picked up the black crystal. As they tried, the black stone lit up. This was the power of the Shadow Destroyer. It was forcibly mobilized and then released. "It works." Zichun heaved a sigh of relief. His guess had indeed come true. The black crystal was similar to the Black Mountain in front of him, but also completely different. Because the Black Mountain was the last treasure of the Shadow Destroyer clan, it could release power on its own to maintain the last life of the Shadow Destroyer clan. It was also because of its existence that their souls were not destroyed after death. It also allowed the clan to survive in this way. "What is this? Where did you get it?" After sensing the black stone, the old man's expression immediately became excited. "It was mined from an abandoned mine." Zichun could see that the old man cared a lot about the black stone, so he explained in detail. The old man was very excited. As for the others, they all knelt before Zichun. Seeing this, Zichun hurriedly said no. "You gave them a chance to be reborn. You also gave the Shadow Destroyer clan a chance to be reborn." The old man said excitedly, "You deserve this bow." With that, the old man also knelt. Zichun hurriedly went forward, but he couldn't do anything. Looking at everyone who was crying tears of joy, Zichun's eyes were a little wet at this moment. However, there was still one last step to completely control those black crystals. In Pofa City, there was a very special place called the Pofa Palace. Its meaning was somewhat similar to the Spirit Pofa Palace. This place was meant to suppress the Soul Destroyer clan. Kant came here today and saw the manager called Nankan. The two of them had been together often in the past few days, so they were already very familiar with each other. After Kant walked into the office of the other party, he explained the purpose of his visit. Nankan said in surprise, "You want that mine?" Kant said with a smile, "It's an abandoned mine." With just 2 words missing, the meaning was completely different. "Why?" Nankan asked in confusion. "You know what this mine used to be, right?" Kant asked instead of answering. "Yes, soul crystals, but it has long been abandoned. Many people have already gone inside to take a look and confirm that it's gone," Nankan said. He was naturally very familiar with those mineral veins. "So, I plan to buy it," Kant said. "It's only because it's abandoned that I want to buy it. Otherwise, I can't afford it." Nankan asked again, "Why?" Kant said, "If I said that I found soul crystals inside, would you believe me?" Nankan laughed. Of course, he didn't believe it. Countless people had gone to that place to mine. It was said that there were some black stones after the soul crystals, but they were useless. Seeing that Kant didn't say anything, Nankin said again. Are you serious? A light flashed in Kant's hand, and something appeared. What do you think? When the other party saw the thing in Kant's hand, his expression couldn't help but change. Inner core? Only a law-breaker beast of the Six Forces realm had a chance of forming an inner core. It was useful for both lawbreakers and lawbreakers. I know that the mine isn't worth much, and it's just a matter of a word from you. But what's really valuable is helping me say a word. Kant said. So, I hope you can say something. Nankin said, although I don't know what you want that place for, it's not a big deal. But it's still a mine. Even if it's abandoned, it's still the property of the Broken Soul Palace. It's still somewhat difficult to directly transfer it to your name. Kant said, I know, so I'll leave it to you. This is the greatest sincerity I can show. It's up to you now. Then, Kant took out a complete lawbreaker beast corpse. Chapter 51:22. Nankin looked at the corpse of the law-breaking beast on the ground. Only law-breaking beasts at the 6th level state could turn into corpses. Although he was also at the 6th level state, he didn't have the opportunity to hunt outside. The corpse in front of him was definitely a good thing. In addition to the inner core from before, he had gained quite a lot of benefits. A smile immediately appeared on his face, but it quickly turned into a bitter smile. It's not that I don't want to agree, but Kant didn't wait for him to finish. He smiled and said, I know that it's difficult. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to you. So, after it's done, I'll give you a complete law-breaking beast corpse as a reward. Kant, you're treating me like an outsider. That's not what I meant. But don't worry, leave this matter to me. No matter what, I still have some face here. Nankin put away the corpse and inner core with a smile. At worst, I'll do it even if I have to throw away my face. And I'll do it today. Kant smiled and said, Thank you very much. It's almost time for dinner. If you're quick, we can go out for a meal. Nankin's smile grew wider. In this law-breaking city, the weakest people who could eat were at the 6th level state. The price of a meal here was much higher than any resource. Sure enough, connections made things easier. In less than an hour, Nankin came back with a contract. All the formalities are done. It'll take effect as long as you sign your name. Nankin smiled and said, Fortunately, it's just an abandoned mineral vein. If it was in use, I wouldn't have the ability to do that. Kongda took the contract and looked at it carefully. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. The task that Ziqian had given him was finally completed successfully. Now, all that was left was Ziqin's signature. Then, Kongda took out a complete corpse of the law-breaching beast. In total, 1 inner core, 2 corpses, and a few meals. This price was much lower than what Ziqian had expected. Back then, Ziqian had specifically told him that he could give Nankin whatever he wanted, provided that he didn't alert anyone else. He was very curious and asked what the black stone was. Ziqian told him that he was the only one who could use it. After Kant found out, he didn't care too much. He directly said that if one of them could be used, then it was a waste. No one would fight over it. Because on the surface, there was only one shadow destroyer, Ziqian. However, Ziqian's warning that one must always be on guard against others made Kant a lot more cautious. Because of that, Ziqian had not shown himself the entire time, nor had he expressed any interest in the black crystal. Everything was done by Kant. While they were eating, Nankin asked Kant what he wanted the mineral vein for. Kant said with a smile. He felt that there were more soul crystals inside and wanted to take a look. Nankin smiled and didn't ask any more questions. In fact, this kind of purchase of mineral veins happened often. However, the mineral veins that others bought were the ones that were truly valuable. It was just that when they bought them, they would label them as worthless or worthless. In short, at a very small price, the mineral vein that belonged to the Broken Soul Palace was transferred to private hands. There was only one person like Kant who bought an abandoned mineral vein. This thing was really worthless. In addition, Kant was very generous, so he simply prepared everything in one day. After Kant finished his task, he prepared to go to the Hall of Spiritual Spells to find Ziqian. After he went in, he found that only Maria was there. In such a big hall of spiritual spells, she was the only one. Where are the others? He asked curiously. Maria told him the truth. which surprised Kant. After knowing that Zichen wasn't there, he was even more surprised. Then, he stayed there and chatted with Maria for a while. Occasionally, people would come to buy resources. The prices were all very good. Lord said that after 10 days, everyone will be busy. So, he asked them to go out and relax. Then why don't you go? I have nowhere to go. Also, there will be people coming every day. If they see that our shop isn't open, they will be disappointed. Kant smiled and left. He had his own place. Of course, he wouldn't stay here. Oh, isn't this Lord Kant? Why? Are you going to be someone's dog again? Just as he walked to the area where the Broken Soul Palace was, Kant heard a strange voice. He didn't need to look to know that it was Phoebe. He turned his head to look at his former companions and said, I say, if you have the time, can't you just focus on cultivation? As expected of a big shot in the 6th strength state. He's already teaching us a lesson, Phoebe said. Unfortunately, we won't be someone's dog. We can't get the resources and can only struggle in the 5 strength state. The others also looked at Kant coldly. Kant shook his head. He realized that he couldn't communicate with his former friends. Of course, he knew the reason. It was because they had cheated Zichen many times, but each time, they were the ones who suffered the most. Now that they were following Zichen, they felt uncomfortable. But after interacting with Zichen, Kant realized that Zichen was really a good person. Although their philosophies were sometimes different, Zichen's starting point was always good. Zichen, why are you here? Kangda suddenly opened his mouth and looked in front of him in surprise. Phoebe and the others' faces suddenly changed. They slowly turned their heads, and when they did, they all put on a different smile. There was no one behind. They had been tricked. When they turned their heads to settle the score with Kant, Kant was already gone. Zichen left behind all the black stones on him. The Shadow Destroyers called it the Life Stone. Zichen felt that it was quite appropriate. This thing was really important to the Shadow Destroyers. After rejecting the old man's offer to send him out personally, Zichen carefully looked around after leaving. After making sure that no one was around, he turned back outside. Along the way, he killed a few lawbreaker beasts. His luck was good, and he obtained an inner core. On the way back, Zichen's biggest concern was whether Kant had succeeded. And if he had, how would he explain it to Mi-Chi? Actually, if he had succeeded, the mineral vein would have belonged to him. Mi-Chi and the others had already broken the rules by going to mine the ore. He had the authority to stop them, but obviously, Zichen didn't want to do that. Back at the Hall of Spiritual Spells, Zichen saw Maria. She had indeed stayed behind. After seeing Zichen, Maria told him that Kant was looking for him and would come once a day. Zichen asked her how Kant was feeling. Maria didn't know why she asked this. She thought about it and said that he was fine. Zichen relaxed. It seemed that the matter had been settled. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in a good mood. Then, it was time to talk to Mi-Chi. The next day, Kant came again. As expected, he took out the unsigned contract. Zichen asked about the situation. He smiled and said that no one cared about this place. The reward was too much. Zichen smiled and signed his name. Now, the life stone mineral vein belonged to him. No one could take it away. Chapter 51:23. Kant knew that Zichen was not in a good position to speak in front of Mickey. After all, in the past, they would always be placed on display, giving people the illusion that they were useless. Zichen nodded. This was actually good. Kant asked, how do you plan to arrange for them? Are you going to chase them away and find someone else to take over? Zichen said, there's no need. Give them some special treatment. Every blackstone they excavate will be purchased at the price of 10 Dao force. As for the others, it will still be 5 streams of strength. Kant frowned slightly and said, isn't this price a little high? Zichen said, I use it myself. It's not high. Kant nodded. He already knew how to negotiate with Mickey and the others. Then, Kant asked again, where do you plan to find more miners? Well, I plan to look for Marcus. I plan to ask him to keep an eye on these people. This was Zichen's plan. Of course, the prerequisite was that Marcus had the time. Kant immediately said, then there's no time to lose. I'll go look for them now. No rush. We can talk about it when Mickey comes back. It's better to talk about this next to the mine. Otherwise, it won't be clear. Zichun and Kant parted ways. Zichun went to look for Marcus, while Kant left the city to look for Mickey at the mine. When Zichun arrived at Marcus's residence, Marcus was surprised. "Why are you here?" "To see you." Zichun sat down. Marcus said, "I've heard about the Hall of Spiritual Spells. What are you going to do? Keep being locked up?" "No rush." Zichun looked at Marcus. "How have you been?" Marcus said, "Same as always." The two of them started to chat about their daily lives. Now, Zichun was very famous. However, Marcus was not very reserved in front of Zichun. However, Marcus was a little emotional. Back then, he was only at the 3 levels of strength, yet he had already grown to such a level. A moment later, Marco smiled and said, "I won't take up any more of your time. Since you're such a busy person, you must have something to tell me. Tell me, if I can help, I won't refuse." Zichun smiled and said, "You should have said it earlier. Now I can't find anything else to say. If you didn't expose me, I would have been embarrassed." After saying that, the two of them burst into laughter. "I recently bought an ore vein that produces a type of black crystal. I hope you can help me." Zichun explained the purpose of his visit. "Mining? Although I'm not very good at it, I can learn it," Marcus said. Zichun said, "Forget about mining. Help me find a group of people, and you'll be in charge of leading them. For every 2 ores you dig out, I'll give you 1 energy as a reward." "What's the point of asking me for a reward? Leave this to me." "There's no problem at all." Marcus patted his chest and said, "That's fine. I won't stand on ceremony with you. As for the other workers, each person will be given 1 crystal and 5 energy as a reward." After hearing what Zichun said, Marcus asked curiously, "What kind of vein are you digging? Is it a killing crystal or vein?" "It would be great if it were a killing crystal or vein. It's a type of black crystal. I have other uses for it." Zichun said, "At first, I thought there should be 100 people. As for how many people I need, it's up to you. When will everyone be gathered?" "Today will do. The latest will be tomorrow. With such a high reward, no one will reject it. There are many people in the 3 strengths realm here, and even more people who don't want it." After making an agreement with Marcus, Zichun returned to the Hall of Spiritual Spells. They had already been given 10 days. It was time to settle the matter here. After all, if the door was closed, not only would there be no benefits, but they would also have to pay rent. The rent for each Hall of Spiritual Spells was a huge sum of money, and this rent had to be paid to the Spirit Breaking Office. Kant left the city and went to the ore vein to find Michi. He had been there before, so he flew all the way and was very fast. When he arrived at the ore vein, he walked in with familiarity. He didn't need a torch. His soul power could explore the surroundings. After finding Michi in the ore vein, Kant called them out together. He said that he had something to say. Everyone walked out. There were a total of 28 people. "Sir, why are you looking for us? Don't tell me that Sir Zichun doesn't want these stones anymore?" Michi was worried. When he said that, everyone's faces changed. Speaking of which, the price of 5 energy for 1 crystal was very generous to them. They didn't need to work too hard every day. As long as they dug out 10 crystals, they would get 50 energy. After such a long time, everyone was used to collecting as much as they wanted. If they suddenly stopped collecting, it would be a great loss to everyone. They would have to work hard for a day like before, but they might not get much. One had to know that when they were outside, they only got 1 or 2 energy crystals a day. Of course, their realms back then weren't as high as they were now. Kant took in everyone's expressions. He smiled and said, "Don't worry. It's a good thing for you." Kant pointed at his feet and said, "This vein is now Sir Zichun's private property. You can continue to mine here. You don't have to worry about it anymore." This was originally public property. Although it was abandoned, it was still public property. Ever since they found out that the black stones could be exchanged for resources, they were worried that the people of Shattering Soul Palace would come and take this place away. It was good that they were driven away. If they were punished, it would be troublesome. "Sir bought this place?" Michi was stunned. He asked, "Then what should we do next?" Kant continued, "Next, you can continue to mine." "But Sir said that the price of this harvest, lower?" Michi's heart jumped. Higher. Kant smiled and said, everyone will be paid 10 energy crystals for every black stone you dig. Remember, it's every one of you. The people who were worried before were relieved after hearing this. They all let out a sigh of relief. Luckily, it was just a false alarm. No, there was a big surprise. Just as everyone was excited and cheering, a voice suddenly sounded, wait, 10 energy crystals, isn't that too little? The smiles on everyone's faces disappeared. They all turned around to look. A bearded man walked out. He looked at Kant and said, Sir, you saw that Michi was immature and tricked him. Why are you tricking us now? Kant's smile didn't fade. Your way of thinking is different. Others are grateful for everything, but you say we're tricking you. Then, let's hear it. Ignoring Michi's signal, the bearded man said, we found this black stone, and we mined it. Now that you've obtained great value from it, you're only giving us 10 energy crystals as compensation. Don't you think it's too selfish? Great value? Kant said, then tell me, what's the value of this thing? Of course, I don't know what value it is. Otherwise, how could you get the benefits? I just think that you're too greedy. Why are you only giving us 10 energy crystals? Chapter 51:24. The bearded man looked at Kant. You can't be so greedy. Michi and the others kept quiet out of fear. They didn't dare to say a word. Kant smiled faintly and said, since you keep saying that you're greedy and cheated, how about this? I'll give you all the black stones that we mine. You'll take them. Me? The bearded man said, I don't know what they're for. Why would you give them to me? If you don't know what they're for, why do you think that 10 streams of energy is too little? Kant asked again. I'm just guessing. You're so cunning. Of course, you have a big use for them. Otherwise, why would you raise the price? The bearded man looked at them with disdain. Kant smiled and said, if we kill you now, we'll look unreasonable. Okay, I'll talk to you first. Kant pointed at his feet and said, whose place is this now? It's yours. What's wrong? The bearded man stared at Kant. Kant said again, then, if we keep you here to mine, it's fine if you don't feel grateful. But shouldn't you show your gratitude? We could mine before. Why can't we do it now? The bearded man said, we're just coolies. Do you think you'll lose out? Kangda said, look, this is the reason why I'm not willing to continue using you guys. It's all because Zichun wants to keep you guys and wants to raise the price. 1 stone for 5 streams of energy. There are plenty of people in this city. Why should I use your 10 streams of energy? The bearded man was stunned. He didn't know how to respond. Kant sneered and said, you should be thankful that I'm not in charge of this place. Otherwise, people like you would have been kicked out. Before tomorrow, there will be another group of people here. Their price is 5 streams of energy for 1 stone. Sir, let's do as we said. We don't want to be special. Michi held his fist and said, we just want a job? Yes, sir. We don't want to be special. Seeing this, the others hurriedly said. A light flickered in front of Kant as he said, before we came here, Zichun told me that out of consideration for your kindness, if you wish to stay, you will be rewarded with a martial crystal if you wish to leave. A piece of martial crystal was sold for 10,000 streams of energy in the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Even with a 10% discount, it would still cost 9,000 streams of energy. How long would they need to dig? For a moment, many people were tempted. These martial crystals were given to Kant by Zichun in the end, as he had considered the possibility that someone might leave. As the first batch of people, Zichun didn't want to let them down. Therefore, this piece of martial crystal was the final token of gratitude. However, although everyone was tempted, they were unwilling to leave just like that. They were not stupid. Even if they obtained the martial crystals after leaving this place, the probability of them breaking through to the next realm was not high. Once they broke through to the next realm, it would be easy for them to reach the 4th strength state. But what if he didn't break through? It was obviously unrealistic to come back and dig. It was even more impossible to get a piece of martial crystal with 10 streams of energy. As long as they stayed here and kept digging, they would naturally be able to buy martial crystals when the time came. In fact, everyone was very satisfied with this. However, if Big Beard could really fight for them, no one would object. In the end, Even Big Beard didn't choose to leave with the martial crystals. From today onwards, the price would increase, so everyone left. Michi didn't leave. He cupped his fists at Kant and said apologetically, "Sorry to trouble you, sir." Kant looked at Michi and said with a smile, "In this world, you should live well." Michi turned and left. Suddenly, Kant recalled that Zi-chan seemed to have said the same thing to him in the past. Could it be that the state of mind he used to look at Michi was the same state of mind that Zi-chen used to look at him? He stopped thinking about it and turned to leave. However, before leaving, he muttered in a low voice, "Who said that good people can't be more cunning than bad people? Oh no, I should say that they're smart." He knew exactly what Big Beard was playing at, but he didn't point it out. Zi-chen would never let good people suffer. However, he would never let a bad person get away with it. After Kant returned, he didn't look for Zi-chan directly. Instead, he went to look for Marcus. Unfortunately, he didn't find him. Kant knew a little about Marcus. After his immediate superior was killed by Zi-chan and Zi-chan disappeared, his life was just ordinary. Although he wasn't disliked, he wasn't highly regarded either. This should be one of the reasons why Zi-chan went to look for Marcus. As for the other reason, it was naturally because he trusted him. Early the next morning, Kant went to look for Marcus again. At this moment, he was here with more than 100 people. When he saw Kant, he was a little surprised. Before Zi-chan arrived, Kant called Marcus aside and told him some things. Marcus nodded repeatedly, indicating that there was no problem. After that, Kant went back. After Zi-chen's Hall of Spiritual Spells closed for 10 days, the other halls of spiritual spells finally started their second round of operations. Speaking of which, they were really patient to be able to endure until now. The 20% discount from before was still valid. However, this was on the premise that the price was increased by 30%. The next day, when everyone went there and saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. They wanted to find someone to reason with, but all 7 stores were offering the same price. It was like everyone had spent 200 streaks of energy to buy a token. Then, the price they paid was actually 10% higher than the original price. There was really no room for reasoning. Some people thought of Zi-chen's Hall of Spiritual Spells and immediately rushed over. However, when they saw that the door was closed, they were all dumbfounded. They were even in despair. They had already guessed that the 7 halls of spiritual spells were up to no good. However, they were all hoping for a fluke. They didn't expect that this store would actually close. There were more and more people outside. In the Hall of Spiritual Spells, Maria asked, "Sir, should we open the store?" The others also looked at Zi-chan. It was obvious that as long as the store was open, many people would come in a few days. Zi-chan said, "No, close it for another 5 days." Maria was puzzled and asked, "Sir, why?" The others were also puzzled. It was obvious that there would be business if they opened the store. Why not? To settle this once and for all. Zi-chan turned around and went back. Without his words, no one dared to open the store. Even if there were some regular customers outside, more and more people came. However, when they saw that the store was closed, they all left in disappointment. When the people from the 7 halls of spiritual spells heard about this, they all laughed. They had finally made the right move. Next, it was time for them to come out and talk about buying Zi-chen's store. When the 8 stores were unified, these people would naturally be at the mercy of others. Everyone was filled with regret, regretting that they shouldn't have been so greedy. However, it was too late now. During this period, someone went to make a scene. However, he was quickly kicked out by the people from the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Time passed day by day. In Pofa City, complaints were everywhere. Unfortunately, no one was willing to redress their grievances. They were hoping for a miracle. However, after 5 days, no miracle appeared. There were even some rumors that they had started to buy the last store, the Hall of Spiritual Spells. However, on the 6th day, when everyone was in despair, a miracle appeared. Chapter 51:25. Just as everyone was in despair, the 8th Hall of Spiritual Spells finally opened for business. However, many people were not looking forward to it. They wondered if this place had already been sold enough. Had the 8 families joined forces? They were all targeting them. With suspicion, They walked in and saw the service staff who used to be there. They welcomed them with smiles on their faces. They were as enthusiastic as before. However, the crowd's mood did not improve. They looked at the prices of the resources. At first glance, the prices were about 30% cheaper than the other 7 stores. This shocked them. They could not believe it. How could it be so cheap? They continued to look at the other resources. They were also 30% cheaper. They looked at them one by one and found that they were all the same. Then, the crowd realized that this was the original price. It had never changed. One of them could not help but ask, why didn't these things increase in price? A female service staff smiled and said, no. If you have a jade token, you can enjoy a 10% discount. What? The crowd widened their eyes as if they had heard something unbelievable. The prices of the other 7 stores had increased crazily. It was already fair for them to maintain the original price. They did not expect that there would be a 10% discount like before. After confirming it again, the crowd was relieved. Then, they rushed to buy the resources. They were afraid that they would buy too little if they were too slow. They were also afraid that it would be a flash in the pan and disappear the next day. Don't worry. There are plenty of resources. It will definitely be enough. The service staff kindly reminded them. However, it was useless. The people who came had bought enough resources with everything they had. Soon, the news spread. In less than an hour, there was a long line outside the Hall of Spiritual Spells. While they were waiting in line, they were very worried. They were afraid that the things in front of them would be sold out. What if they did not have the same price the next day? Those who walked out of the Hall of Spiritual Spells were very grateful. They did not expect that there would be a merchant with a conscience when they were in despair. At the same time, they swore that even if there was a 20% discount, they would not go there. This time, they almost got themselves killed because of their greed. Maria looked at the scene and was very excited. Her popularity was back. In Zichen's office, a 6 Forces realm cultivator was glaring at him angrily. Zichen, are you really not going to sell it? The other party came early in the morning to talk about the harvest. In the past few days, several batches of people had arrived. Zichen looked at the other party and said calmly, why should I transfer it? You won't have any business if you continue like this. The other party said indifferently, after all, you only have 1 shop and we have 7. If the 2 sides really start a price war, the one who will die will definitely be you. That's why I'm here today to tell you that everyone should take a step back. If you don't want to sell it, that's fine too. You just have to raise the price by 30%. Zichen looked at the 6 Realms cultivator and said, all of you are too black-hearted. They were all here to help with the business. To put it bluntly, they were all dogs. Why should they oppress these ordinary people? Even if you earn a few more strands of energy, do you really think the people inside will take a fancy to you? Do you think they will think highly of you? As for you embezzling the profits, aren't you worried that your masters will stop giving you bones when they find out one day? Why? Judging from your tone, you don't want to? The 6 Realms cultivator snorted. I don't believe that there are people who have a grudge against power. Zichen said, no one has a grudge against power, but there are many ways to obtain power. There's no need to use the method of harming others. If you do this, you are destined to fail. Zichen pointed outside. If you don't believe me, go and take a look. See if your 7 shops have better business than mine. The other party said angrily, this is because you are causing trouble. You don't follow the rules. With Zichen's actions, it would be strange if their 7 shops had any business. Zichen said, this is called integrity, okay? You don't even have basic integrity. You rely on swindlers. What right do you have to talk to me about rules? Zichen waved his hand and said, go back and tell your people not to come again. My patience is limited. If they come again, I will kill them. All right, if you want to transfer your Hall of Spiritual Magic, you can come to me. Dream on. The other party turned around and left. When he arrived at the door, that person suddenly stopped and said, Zichen, perhaps we aren't a match for you in terms of strength, but if you want to compete with us in terms of business, then you're too naive. You just have to wait and see. Zichen nodded and said, okay, I will wait for you to make your move. The other party went downstairs and saw the crowd at the door. His expression became even uglier. This bunch of greedy idiots. He was so angry that he said that the things here were fake. Unfortunately, he was ignored. Marcus led more than 100 people to the mineral vein. Kant also went once along the way to meet up with Marcus. Everything that followed was left to Marcus. Marcus also met with Mitch and the others. He told them that all they needed to do was to give him the crystals they dug up. After that, Mitch personally brought Marcus to the mineral vein. This place used to be a soul crystal mine, so there were already tunnels dug underground. This time, Marcus wanted to roughly check how many black crystals there were in the mine. He made a rough estimate. With the current manpower, they would not be able to finish digging in a few years. This was a large mineral vein. After stabilizing in the early stages, they would need to find a steady stream of people in the later stages. Moreover, it was not easy to dig. Almost no one in the second force state had the ability to do so. Only those in the third force state could. After that, Marcus began to work on this matter. After the business of the Hall of Spiritual Magic was booming, Kant came back again. He brought Milia with him to do some shopping. During this time, Hobson found Kant and told him that there had been some pressure from above. He said that there were some complaints about the purchase price. On that day, Kant treated Hobson to food and wine. The matter was settled. He had the authority to give a low price. Of course, he could also give the same price to others. However, it was obvious that those people were not as important as Kant, a spellbreaker. Moreover, he was a 6th force state spellbreaker. After returning, Kant told Zichun about this matter. Naturally, it was the 7 shops that were behind it. Since Kant had already settled it, he did not say anything else. Fortunately, there was Kant. With his identity as a spellbreaker, some things were easy to handle. Unfortunately, Zichun, a shadow destroyer, should have had a more noble status. However, no one recognized him here. In the mine with black crystals, Big Beard walked to one of the people and said, "Hey, how many black crystals did you dig up today?" That person did not recognize Big Beard, but he replied, 8. Chapter 51:26. What did you say? The man could not believe his ears. 41 strands of energy. Are you selling it or not? Big Beard was impatient. Of course, I'm selling it. The man quickly nodded. Normally, he could only sell it for 40 strands of energy. Now that the other party was offering him an extra strand, he would be a fool not to sell it. Both parties reached a deal. Big Beard carried the basket and continued to walk forward to collect everyone's harvest. Just by reselling, he could get double the price. Naturally, it was much faster than digging by himself. After the basket was full, Big Beard left. Along the way, the people looked at this scene in surprise. They were puzzled. Where would he get the profit from such a high price? He might even lose money. Michi heard the news and quickly ran over. Kazimo, what are you doing? Kazimo was Big Beard's name. After hearing Michi's voice, he turned around and said, "Can't tell that I'm doing business?" Michi approached and saw the black stones behind him. There were at least 100 pieces. He said angrily, "You're taking advantage of the master's loophole." Big Beard's face immediately became gloomy. What master? He's playing us like monkeys. It's obviously good stuff, but he's giving us such a low price. Michi said, "This is what you promised. If you refuse, you can take the martial crystal and leave." Kazimo laughed. "Take the martial crystal and leave? You think I'm stupid? It's just a martial crystal. How much energy can it be worth?" He patted the basket behind him proudly. "See that? I don't have to do anything in a day, and I can get a few hundred strands of energy. In less than half a month, I can get a martial crystal back. In a month, it's 2 pieces. In a year, it's more than 20 pieces. Do you think I care about his piece?" The others stopped what they were doing. Obviously, they did not understand why Big Beard would say that. They were all curious. "I think that since we've promised the master, we should follow the rules," Michi said in a low voice. "That's not good. Get lost." Big Beard waved his hand. "It's all your fault, you idiot. If it weren't for your incompetence, we wouldn't be exploited like this. If you had fought for us back then, not to mention 10 strands of power, even 20 strands of power would have been possible." Mitch recalled the scene when he first met Zichun. At that time, Lord Zichun saw that his life was in danger and gave him a few strands of power. At that time, He still insisted on selling the blackstone, but unfortunately, Sir didn't want it. It was only by chance that they met later on did they manage to collect enough. As the person involved, Mitch knew very well that it was just a coincidence. Right now, the 10 strands of Sir's power had already reached their expectations. That was because the people who came later also possessed 5 strands of power. They had already gained a huge advantage. Cosimo, if you want to live a long life, you have to be down to earth, Mitch said. You won't last long like this. Scram. Big Beard pointed at Michi and said, if you dare to tell on me, I will kill you. Then, he turned to look at the others. And you guys, if you dare to say anything, I'll kill you too. To tell you the truth, I know you're sir, that's Ichon. I have a very good relationship with him. Otherwise, why would I take your blackstone? The others naturally didn't dare to say anything. To them, 5 strands of power for 1 piece of blackstone was already enough. As for the rest, they couldn't earn it, nor did they have the ability to earn it. And you idiots, you didn't use the labor and still dug for yourselves. Serves you right for not having a goal. After Big Beard scolded the original people, he carried the basket of blackstone and left. Marcus had already set up an encampment outside. After coming out, Big Beard went to find Marcus to exchange for resources. Looking at the crystals behind him, Marcus said, today's harvest is not bad. Big Beard smiled and said, that's because I was lucky. I dug up a lot. Immediately, someone came over to count. In the end, there were 135 pieces. Marcus directly took out 1,350 strands of power and gave them to him. There were no questions. Seeing so much power, Big Beard's eyes were wide open. Just one trip to the mineral vein, and he gained a few hundred strands of power. If he went a few more times a day, wouldn't he be rich? Big Beard turned and left, entering the mine again. Sir, the person in charge of counting just now looked at Marcus. Marcus smiled and said, it doesn't matter. After Big Beard finished exchanging, he went back down. During this time, he looked at his former colleagues who were still working with their butts out. His eyes were full of disdain. Serves you right for being useless. You'll all die of exhaustion. He walked through the crowd proudly and walked toward the strangers. How many blackstones have you dug up? I want as many as you have. Soon, he bought another basket. Seeing this, Mitch wanted to persuade him, but he was held back by the others. Obviously, they couldn't persuade him, so they just let him fend for himself. Sigh, it's a bit heavy. Looks like I'll have to find a few people to carry it for me next time. Big Beard shook his head and smiled. Fine, I'll do it myself this time. But next time, I'll have to hire someone. This time, both forces will probably fight to do it. He carried the ores and went out to find Marcus to exchange for them. Marcus looked at the blackstones and didn't say anything. He exchanged for all of them again. Big Beard became more and more proud and prepared to go deeper. This time, he had already planned to hire a few more people and buy more. It would be best if he bought all of their gains that day. In this way, he might be able to earn a piece of martial crystal a day. Then, in a year, he would be able to earn a few hundred pieces. It would be difficult for his realm not to improve. As for whether Zichun would interfere, he didn't think too much about it. If he wanted to save face, he wouldn't interfere in this matter. Obviously, he still believed that he only took a small portion and that the majority was with Zichun. Zichun was allowed to earn a lot, but others were not allowed to take a little from him. How could anyone do business like this in the world? Just as he was proudly planning how many martial crystals he would earn in the future, Marcus suddenly called out to him. Wait a minute. Did you dig up those blackstones yourself? Big Beard turned around and said, What do you mean? Marcus said, You also know that your price is twice as high as the others. Maybe some of you secretly collected enough crystals from others and then came to sell them. This goes against the original intention, so naturally, it's not allowed. So I'm asking, did you dig these blackstones alone? I dug them. Of course, I dug them alone. Big Beard nodded and said, If it wasn't me, who else could it be? Marcus stood up and said, All right, I'll follow you inside and personally watch you dig. Let's not talk about digging up 300 pieces a day. If you can dig up 100 pieces, I'll give you 10 strands of strength in exchange for all the blackstones you bring over. Big Beard's expression immediately changed. That's not good, right? If you don't prove it yourself, how can I guarantee that you didn't dig these? Marcus's eyes flashed with a cold light. Under my control, no one is allowed to take advantage of this. Chapter 51:27. The bearded man was stunned. He did not expect Marcus to be so serious. Why? Do you have a problem? Marcus's eyes turned cold. I didn't say. I dug them up in one day. I dug them up in the past and kept them underground. I took the opportunity to take them all back today. The bearded man braced himself and stammered. Are you sure? Lying in front of me often leads to a fate worse than death. Marcus warned him coldly. I'm sure. I'm very sure. At this point, he could only deny it. Marcus smiled coldly and glanced at the entrance of the cave. A few people walked out of the mine. When the bearded man saw them, his expression immediately changed. He quietly turned his head away, trying not to be seen by those people. Now that he was discovered, it was naturally troublesome. Hey, do you still want to buy blackstones? We'll sell them to you tomorrow. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but one of them saw the bearded man and even greeted him familiarly. The bearded man pretended not to hear and turned his head to the side, giving the person his back. Hey, I'm talking about you. Why aren't you talking? That person shouted again. You, the one with the long beard. The bearded man was immediately angry. He turned around and warned, Don't talk nonsense. I didn't buy your blackstones. I dug them up myself. You don't admit it? Damn it, all the power is with me. I haven't even used one. Didn't you say that it has something to do with Zichun? Can you sell it at a high price? Are you still going to buy it tomorrow? If you don't, then forget it. If you want to buy it, then tell us and we'll prepare everything for you. The bearded man wanted to bite that person to death. How could he be so stupid? Slap. A slap suddenly landed on the bearded man's head and sent him flying. You dare to take advantage of my loophole? Do you want to die? Marcus's eyes flashed with a murderous intent. The bearded man rolled on the ground and let out a wail. He shouted, He's dead, he's dead. Marcus stepped forward and kicked the bearded man again. The bearded man began to roll on the ground. Murder. Murder for no reason. Where is the law? The bearded man rolled and howled loudly, attracting even more people. Seeing this, Marcus was amused. This guy was really like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. At this moment, more and more people came out. When everyone saw this scene, they all had strange expressions on their faces. Marcus waved his hand, and two men immediately stepped forward and carried Big Beard over. When he came near, Marcus raised his hand and slapped him without saying a word. Pa, pa, pa. The sound of the slap spread far and wide. Big Beard was still howling. After dozens of slaps, Marcus stopped and stared at the other party. What did you just say? Law? Are you talking to me about law? I'm not under your control. What right do you have to hit me? The bearded man said angrily, I'm Zichin's subordinate. I'm under Zichin's command. Zichin? Marcus was amused. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? Does Zichin know who you are? You're only at the level of 3. You don't even want to be his dog, and you still want to be his subordinate? After saying this, a few more slaps landed. After that, Marcus looked at the others and said, I'm sure everyone knows that the price of black stones is different. He's paying 10 strands, and you're paying 5 strands. This is a special discount that Lord Zichin gave to a small number of people. It's a pity that this guy doesn't know what's good for him. He actually bought a few hundred black stones in private and came here to exchange for a high price. The people who walked up naturally knew this. Big Beard's arrogance was still vivid in everyone's mind. I only have one way to deal with this kind of guy who doesn't know what's good for him, and that is to kill him. A murderous intent flashed in Marcus' eyes. This is a warning to others. It's also called, Don't be so shameless. A chilling murderous intent emerged from Marcus' body. Big Beard, who sensed the murderous intent, was almost scared silly. He did not expect that the other party would want to kill him, just because he exchanged for a few strands of energy? Compared to what you've gained, what is this? What right do you have to kill me? I only exchanged for a few strands of energy. What right do you have to kill me? Big Beard shouted. Compared to what you've gained, what is this little gain of mine? Marcus said, let's not talk about the value of these black stones first. You only contributed to the mining, so naturally, you can only get the mining reward. This sentence was not only said to Big Beard, but also to those who came out. Only Zichun was kind. If it were someone else, would such a thing happen? On the same day, he drove away this group of people who did not know what's good for them. After listening to Khan's words, Marcus started to dislike Big Beard, Mickey, and the others. That was why today's scene happened. So, you dare to use Lord's kindness to take advantage of this loophole and seek your own benefits. Only death awaits you. The energy around Marcus surged, and he was about to kill Big Beard. Only by killing him could he end this once and for all. Wait. A voice came from the side, and Mickey quickly walked over. Lord, can you spare him? Mickey begged. What do you think? Marcus said coldly. For doing such a thing, only death awaits. Lord, since it's his first offense, let him work here as a laborer. He doesn't want any reward. He'll help Lord mine for a year. I only ask that Lord spare his life, Mickey pleaded. Big Beard could tell that Marcus was really going to kill him. He was bold, but he was not fearless. He quickly nodded, indicating that he was willing to mine for free. Marcus looked at Mickey and said sarcastically, Do you think I care about such a free laborer? Or do you think Zichun cares? Mickey cupped his fists and said, Lord, we are willing to use our special reward in exchange for Katsumo's life. Marcus sneered, Is that so? Then you have to ask the others if they are willing. Mickey looked to the side. The people who were originally there either turned their heads to look to the side or lowered their heads without saying a word. Obviously, they were not willing. So, you alone are not enough, Marcus said. Or, you can find another one. If there are two, I will agree to your request. Mickey's eyes rekindled with hope. Big Beard also heaved a sigh of relief. Just one more person was enough. But it was obvious that Big Beard had overestimated his character. Mickey had also underestimated human nature. Still, no one stepped forward. Big Beard said angrily, Do you have any F***king conscience? Who brought you here to mine? F***ck. Now that I'm about to die, you are actually indifferent? The others were still silent, but only they knew what they were thinking. Big Beard pointed to their noses and scolded them as fools. He was much more energetic than he was now. They did not mind Big Beard dying here. Seeing the disappointed Mickey, Marcus suddenly waved his hand and said, Forget it. One then. Then he pointed to Big Beard. Leave all your power and get lost. All? Big Beard was stunned. Is there a problem? No. Big Beard quickly took out all the power he had. There were thousands of them. Looking at Big Beard who had nothing, Mickey could not bear it. He took out dozens of power and handed them to Big Beard. Give me all of yours. Once I leave, you won't get anything. You can still mine here in peace. Big Beard took the power and then reached out to search Mickey's body. He only left when he had taken all the power. Chapter 51:28. The bearded man took all of Mickey's energy and left. Mickey was stunned, not knowing what to do. Marcus glanced at Mickey and did not say anything. It was just a little strange. How could such a person live until now without any sharpness? Fortunately, he was not hopeless. At least he did not leave with the bearded man on impulse. A person walked over from afar. After seeing the person, everyone's expression changed. Then, they all saluted the person. This included Marcus as well. Zichun waved his hand and said, Go back to your work. Everyone immediately dispersed. Some of them sneaked glances at Zichun as they left. They were very curious. Zichun walked forward and patted Mickey's shoulder. He said, It seems that you will have to work harder from now on. Mickey nodded. He thought that Zichun would definitely criticize him when he came over. After everyone left, Marcus was puzzled and asked, Why? If it were not for Zichun's rumors, he would have slapped the bearded man to death. Keeping such a person alive would be a disaster sooner or later. That guy is really interesting. Zichun said, Now, those people still lack an opportunity to deal with me. Maybe that guy just now can give me a surprise. Marcus knew that the 7 halls of spiritual magic had recently joined forces to deal with Zichun. He was puzzled and asked, "Just him alone? Don't underestimate anyone." Zichun smiled faintly and said, "If you trace back to the source of some big events, they are usually small things." "Oh right. Why are you here?" Marcus asked again. "Is the Hall of Spiritual Magic not busy?" "I was waiting for those people to make a move. I was a little bored, so I came over to take a look." Zichun said, "Quickly arrange things here, and then take people to other places to check out the situation. I recently bought a few abandoned mineral veins. Take some people to see if there are any more of these black stones. I have seen those stones many times. They are useless. Even Kant said that they are useless." Marcus said, "Are you sure that it is useful to collect them?" To collect these black stones, Zichun had to put in a lot of effort every day. It wasn't just those who received the money, but also other people's expenses. This was because he, as the leader, had not asked for a reward. Otherwise, the price Zichun had to pay would have been even greater. "It's useful, but it can't be exchanged for other values." Zichun said, "So, to me, this thing is actually a losing deal." Marcus said, "Then why are you still offering such a high price?" Zichun said, "Although it's a loss-making deal, its value is undeniable. In short, I didn't lose out." First, he said that it was a losing deal, and now, he said that it was a win-win deal. This made Marcus confused. Fortunately, he didn't continue to ask. He only said that he still needed some time before he could leave. Zichun said, "If you have someone you trust, you can ask them to watch over it for you. For me, the more the better. So, I hope your luck is better, and you can find this kind of black stone from other mineral veins. I don't want too much, just 1 mineral vein will be enough." Recently, Zichun hadn't been idle. He asked Kant to buy several mineral veins that had run out of soul crystals. He didn't send anyone to check and just bought them directly. After all, the price wasn't high. This was a gamble. If he was lucky, he might reap a big harvest. If he was unlucky, it didn't matter. Such a small loss was something that Zichun could still afford. The bearded man left with all of Michi's forces. His realm wasn't high, so he wanted to run back before dawn. It was already dark, and he hadn't reached the city yet. He cursed to suppress the fear in his heart. He returned to the city in fear. The bearded man was extremely unwilling to lose such a lucrative job and didn't get back the martial crystals. He wanted revenge. It was obviously impossible to challenge Zichun directly. He couldn't even withstand a slap from him. So, he thought of taking advantage of Zichun's enemy. Early the next morning, he went to Zichun's Hall of Spiritual Spells and bought 2 black stones at a 10% discount. He also waited in line for a long time, which made him even more unhappy. Holding the 2 black stones, he went to another Hall of Spiritual Spells. After entering, he didn't look for the service staff. Instead, he asked to see the manager, saying that he had something important to discuss. As a result, he was kicked out as soon as he arrived at the first store. When he arrived at the second store, it was slightly better. He was kicked out, and the other party didn't do anything. He was very depressed and cursed in his heart that these people were all idiots. How could they not recognize such a good thing? If this continued, he would definitely be kicked out. He had tried this before. So, he wanted to change his method. After entering the third hall of spiritual spells, he coughed lightly and said directly, "Ask your master to come out. I have a resource here that even Zichun wants." As soon as he said this, the idle service staff looked at each other. Of course, they knew Zichun's name. Not only was he a shadow destroyer, but he was also their #1 competitor. For the past few days, there had been no one in the store. It was all thanks to Zichun. "It's up to you to believe it or not," the bearded man said, pretending to be profound. Everyone was skeptical, but with the thought that it was better to believe it than not, they went to look for Michael. After Michael came down, he looked at the bearded man and said coldly, "If you can't give me any valuable information, you will die." The bearded man didn't expect Michael's temper to be so bad. His expression changed, but since things had come to this, he could only take out the black stone. Without waiting for the other staff to show a look of disdain, he hurriedly said, "Although this thing is only sold for 10 strands of power in Zichun's shop, we've already helped him earn tens of thousands of yuan in private. Michael took the black stone and looked at it. Naturally, he didn't see anything special about it. He looked at the service staff and noticed the strange expressions on their faces. Do you know each other? He's been here a few times and was chased away by us. I didn't expect him to think of such a method again, one of them said helplessly. Michael narrowed his eyes and looked at the bearded man. You dare to trick me? Do you want to die? The bearded man immediately said, Don't listen to their nonsense. They're all ignorant. Zichen collected 10 strands of strength in one go. Now that you've bought it back, you won't lose out at all. What nonsense is this? Michael was a little confused. Speak slowly. If you agree, I'll spare your life. Otherwise, you will die. So, you only have one chance. Prepare your words well. The bearded man was overjoyed. As long as he had the chance to speak, it was fine. Normally, he wouldn't know what to say. But with Zichen's superfluous move, this matter was much easier to handle. He explained everything in detail, from the first 5 strands of strength to the last 10 strands of strength. Michael was interested. There was such a thing? Chapter 51:29. The more the bearded man spoke, the more excited he became. His spittle flew everywhere. He seemed to have found a way to make money. Michael played with the black stone in his hand and glanced at him. He didn't look like he was lying. Of course, he could slap a mere 3rd-level cultivator to death if he dared to lie in front of him. Therefore, the possibility of a conspiracy was very small. Then why did you come here? Why didn't you continue to mine? Michael asked. The bearded man said angrily, That Zichen is too despicable. He made a lot of money, but he only gave us a little reward. I was angry, so I quarreled with him and then came back. Sir, don't doubt me. To show my hatred for him, he gave me a piece of martial crystal, but I didn't take it. The bearded man said, It's because I know that I can't bear to take a gift from him. I don't like him. If I take his martial crystal stone and deal with him, my conscience won't be at ease. Michael naturally didn't believe him, but he didn't continue to ask. He could already hear the hatred for Zichen in the bearded man's words. That was enough. So he asked, What do you suggest? Sir, buy the black stones and hoard them all. Piss off Zichen. If you wait until you discover their great value and then buy them, it will be too late. Michael pondered for a moment. After a while, he waved his hand and said, You, go to Zichen and see what's going on. One of them nodded and then went to Zichen's Hall of Spiritual Spells. People were still queuing here. The booming business was a sharp contrast to the other 7 halls of spiritual spells. Because he didn't buy anything, he walked in directly. Sure enough, he saw the black stones in a corner. However, the price was no longer 10 martial crystals, but 20 martial crystals. His expression changed slightly. Then he turned and left. When he went back, he told Michael the news. Impossible. When I came here, I only bought 2 pieces. It cost me 18 martial crystals, the bearded man shouted. You're stupid, but he's not. Michael glanced at the bearded man. The bearded man said dispiritedly, Then what should we do? He actually raised the price. That damn Zichen is really cunning. When the price was high, there was no point in collecting more. His appearance was even more meaningless. It's over. It's all over now. He turned around to leave. His plan to deal with Zichen had completely failed. In the future, if he wanted to target Zichen, it would be a fool's dream, because the difference between the two was simply too great. Who's done? Michael suddenly spoke. Big Beard turned around and looked at Michael in confusion. Michael said, Since he wants 20 streams of power, why don't we just give him 20? My lord, this. The bearded man was increasingly puzzled. He still wanted the price even after it was raised? Was there something wrong with his brain? You said it yourself. Zichen is just trying to cover it up. Since that's the case, let's buy these things back. Michael said, It's a type of crystal that we don't know what use it has. Since we're willing to collect 10 strands of power, it naturally has its value. Perhaps we can really buy it first and then slowly study it. Michael said, Can you still get this thing? Big Beard shook his head and said, We can't. Zichen bought all the mineral veins. He's in charge there now. Since that's the case, then go now and buy more black stones back. Michael said. By all the black stones they have. My lord, I'm only in the 3rd level. How can I? Before Big Beard could finish speaking, Michael said directly, Wood, take the resources and go with him. With that, he hurriedly walked out. Perhaps this time, he could use this incident to suppress Zichun in all aspects. Before that, he naturally had to discuss with the other 6 families. After all, there were many black stones. He couldn't take them all by himself. Big Beard brought Wood and walked arrogantly into Zichin's Hall of Magic. They went straight for the black stones. Big Beard pointed at the black stones and said, I want all of these. I have a discount card here. There were about 200 pieces placed there. The black stones had been placed there for a long time, and no one had asked about them. He didn't expect someone to buy them today. There were 203 pieces in total. Big Beard bought all of them. Then he said, Do you have more of these black stones? I want more, and I want a lot of them. The other party was obviously not sure. He immediately went to inform Maria. When Maria heard the news and came here, she was a little surprised to see Big Beard. This was because Big Beard had come here a few times with Mickey to deliver the black stones. The price they offered back then was 5 forces. But today, he was actually here to buy them. Looking at the surprise in Maria's eyes, Big Beard knew that she recognized him. So he raised his head slightly and said, How many of these black stones do you have? I want all of them. Maria said, About 100. What? 100? Are you kidding? During this time, you've already hoarded 50,000. Big Beard panicked. 100? Are you trying to dismiss a beggar? I'm sorry. The black stones were placed here by my lord. He didn't mean to sell them. Maria explained apologetically. Big Beard and Wood looked at each other. Obviously, they had guessed it. These were just to cover up. Now that they had bought them, they wouldn't sell them. Where's your integrity? Where's your integrity? Seeing this, Big Beard immediately shouted, I came to buy them because I knew you had them here. It's fine that you raised the price, but now you're not being honest. As he shouted, many people looked over. Maria was a little anxious. Sir, we can talk again. Big Beard said, There's nothing to talk about. Give me another 1,000. Otherwise. At this moment, Wood spoke. 10,000. He first looked at the bearded man with some disdain. He really was a guy who had not seen the world. He thought that $1,000 was a big number. He looked at Maria. We want 10,000. This. Wait a moment. I'll go and ask my lord. Maria said. Big Beard waved his hand and said, Hurry up and ask. Let me tell you, if there's nothing, don't blame us for making a scene here. Maria went upstairs and saw Zichun. My lord, you guessed right. They really came. I said that it was only 100, but they asked for 10,000. And they didn't even bargain. Zichun sat there. After hearing this number, he didn't look too surprised. He said, Go and tell them that it will be very difficult to get 10,000 at once. The manpower and material resources will be very high, and we can only provide 100 per day. Zichun suddenly smiled and said, Of course, if they are in a hurry, we can also provide 10,000, but there will be another price. Zichun stretched out 5 fingers. 50 strands of strength, 1 piece. And there's no discount. 50 strands of strength, my lord. Isn't this too high? What if they are scared away? Maria was very worried because she knew very well that this thing was bought with 5 strands of strength. It wouldn't be a loss even if it was sold for 10 strands. And this was their first customer. Was it really good to raise the price like this? Zichun said, I'm afraid that they will be scared away. So I didn't ask for 100 strands of strength. Don't worry, they will definitely agree to the price of 50 strands of strength. Maria went downstairs with doubts. Chapter 51:30. Zichun had been cultivating recently. However, without higher-level resources, his progress was extremely slow. Under normal circumstances, he would need decades, centuries, or even longer before he could break through again. Therefore, he had to find something to do during this long period of time. For example, it was quite interesting to fight with these people now. Michael contacted the other 6 Hall of Spiritual Spell Masters and told them about his latest idea. If it's really useful, we can give it a try. After everyone heard this, someone immediately said. The others naturally had no objections. After all, it wouldn't cost much energy. Just then, someone came and whispered in Michael's ear. Hearing this, Michael couldn't help but smile. Everyone looked at him. Michael said, I just received news that Zi-chun can only provide 100 blackstones a day. If you want more. How? One of them asked. We have to increase the price. Michael smiled. If you want 10,000 blackstones, you have to pay 50 energy per piece. And it's the kind that doesn't give a discount. 50 blackstones? Isn't this price 30 energy points higher than the original price? One of them was shocked. Is Zi-chun crazy? Michael said, to be precise, it's 41 energy points higher than the original price. Because it's 10 energy points in the morning, and there's a discount. For a moment, everyone's expressions changed. Michael said, Everyone, what do you see? Everyone was smart. Of course, they knew that this was Zi-chun's plan because he wasn't willing to sell. However, 50 energy points per piece wasn't cheap. Would they be able to make a profit in the future? First, Zi-chun secretly bought the mineral vein, and then he paid the mining fee of 10 Dao Force. Everyone, if it were you, do you think the purchase price of 50 Dao Force is worth it? Michael asked and answered himself. If we don't look at the effect, of course it would be worth it. The problem now is that we don't know the true value of the blackstones. Indeed, if they knew the true value of the blackstones, they would naturally have a detailed strategy. But now, they didn't know the value of the blackstones. With Zi-chun's cunning, I don't believe he would do a bad deal. Michael said, so, my suggestion is not only to buy it, but also to buy all the blackstone back. We signed an agreement with Zi-chun before, so he can't sell his blackstones to others. Only we can collect enough. In this way, we, who have monopolized the blackstone, will naturally have the absolute right to set the price once we discover its value in the future. Michael pointed in a direction and said, if we didn't control one less hall of spiritual magic, we wouldn't be in such an awkward situation. Therefore, in order to prevent something like this from happening again, we must ensure that all the blackstones are in our hands. Everyone looked at each other, hesitation in their eyes. But after a while, he nodded. After that, everything was left to Big Beard to handle. Yesterday, Big Beard had been chased away like a stray dog. However, today, his status had changed. He had become rich and overbearing. After receiving instructions, he and Du returned to Zi-chun's Hall of Spiritual Spells. Seeing Milia again, the bearded man said directly, we want $10,000 every day. Every day? Milia said, well, I'm sorry. We can't guarantee that there will be so many blackstones every day. Big Beard said, 50 streams of power for one blackstone and no discounts. We agree to this price. Milia said again, I'm sorry. We may be able to provide enough in the early stages, but it will be difficult in the later stages. After all, these blackstones need to be mined. We can't produce 10,000 blackstones a day. Big Beard was deeply aware of this point. Unless Marcus sent more people over, it would be really difficult to get 10,000 blackstones a day. Based on his speed, he could only mine about 10 blackstones a day. A few hundred people added up to only a few thousand. Even if it's not 10,000, we still want it. Big Beard had told Michael this point when he came, so he wasn't in a difficult position now. He said directly, that's fine too. But you have to guarantee that all the blackstones you mine will be sold to us. Milia nodded and said, of course, we can guarantee this. Big Beard sneered and said, I don't believe you. We need to sign a contract. Milia looked a little troubled and said, I see. That's fine too. But you have to guarantee that you will collect as many blackstones as you dig out. What a joke. Do we lack your power? Big Beard sneered. He was very rich and overbearing. After both sides signed the contract, Milia took it upstairs and was about to hand it to Zi-chun. Zi-chun said, keep the contract well. You will handle the blackstone transactions from now on. Milia nodded. But as if she thought of something, she said, sir, are those blackstones really good things? Take a guess. Zi-chun smiled and didn't give a direct answer. The blackstones that he brought back last time should be able to last for a while. So Zi-chun planned to make use of this time to do business with everyone. The next day, 10,000 Blackstones were shipped over and handed to Big Beard. And it was also the first time that Big Beard used a storage ring. On this day, Milia obtained 500,000 streams of power and then handed it to Marcus. She asked him to take this power and go to the mines. After all, there was no credit. Everyone had to use Blackstones to exchange for power every day. It was the same on the second day. But on the third day, the number of Blackstones decreased to 9,000, which caused Big Beard to complain. He sternly told them that they had to gather enough by tomorrow. After all, it had only been 3 days, and they were already cheating. On the fourth day, they gathered another 10,000 Blackstones. Because they didn't know anything, they collected a lot of Blackstones every day. She followed Zichen's instructions and gave this power to Marcus in the early stages. And Marcus took this power and found another group of people. The number of people increased, and so did the production. Kant was also arranged to go out. Marcus didn't have time. He helped to check the mines and look for other Blackstones. After knowing that Zichen started to sell Blackstones, he was very surprised. Although he didn't know the true value of Blackstones, he knew that Zichen valued these Blackstones very much. Otherwise, he wouldn't have paid such a high price to buy that mine. So he asked Zichen. Zichen didn't hide anything and told Kant his idea. This made Kant stunned. Could it be like this? If he really succeeded, then the 6 hall masters of the spiritual spell palace would probably eat him, right? Chapter 51:31. Kant went to look for other mineral veins while Marcus found more people to enter the original mineral vein. Outside of the mineral vein, the other facilities had to be completed. Hence, he was very busy and had no time to be distracted. Recently, he heard that the Blackstone was sold at the price of 50 strands of energy. This price was naturally a profit, but he still didn't understand. How much was it worth? Moreover, Zichen still asked him to find people. It seemed that he wanted to finish mining this mineral vein in a few days. The energy he obtained from Maria was enough to cover the cost of mining. The recent output was already 10,000 pieces a day, but Zichen still wanted to increase the speed. Big Beard became a regular at the Hall of Spiritual Spells. He came here every day with his head held high. Because he was rich. What? Only 9,300 pieces today? What are you doing? Big Beard's shout attracted the attention of many people. Everyone looked over. He looked at Maria and reprimanded. We are buying at such a high price, and you are not mining diligently? I say, can't you increase the output? Sorry, we are already increasing the speed. It's just that it's getting harder and harder to mine recently. Maria explained. I don't care. We have already signed the contract. Big Beard said indifferently. Now, give me the rest of the Blackstone. Big Beard took the Blackstone and left. Maria kept the energy according to the plan. The energy was no longer given to Marcus, but to her. The current amount was already very considerable. Michael and the others still hadn't found the real use of the Blackstone. However, they couldn't just keep buying it. Hence, they wanted to go deeper and ask for help. They wanted to see if the people inside knew. They brought some of the Blackstone inside. As the Hall of Spiritual Spells had no business recently, they needed to give the people inside an explanation. The people inside obviously didn't care about the small matters outside, especially the profits of the Hall of Spiritual Spells. However, after hearing that Zichen was mining these Blackstone, they were very interested. They also became interested in the dispute between the people. Hence, they left a portion of the Blackstone and started to study it to see the true value. Michael and the others waited patiently outside. While waiting, they were still buying Blackstone in large quantities. A few days later, news came from inside. At present, they did not know the value of this Blackstone, but he guessed Zichen's identity. Perhaps this Blackstone had something to do with the Shadow Destroyer. However, the people inside didn't say anything about the details. They only told him that they were still looking for people to investigate the matter, and that they would send news out as soon as there was news. When Michael and the others heard this, their expressions changed. Because the person inside had said very clearly that this thing was either worthless or related to the Shadow Destroyer. Michael looked at them. Do you believe that this thing is a waste product? Everyone was silent. Of course, they didn't want to believe it. Michael said, whether you believe it or not, I don't believe it. They all looked at Michael. Zichen isn't a fool. He wouldn't buy something useless at a high price. He said confidently, I firmly believe that this thing must be related to the Shadow Destroyer. Therefore, this step of ours is actually the right one. Michael played with the black stone in his hand and said, to us, it might really be useless, but to Zichun, it's definitely of great use. Therefore, as long as we keep buying, Zichun will eventually not be able to take it anymore and come to us to buy it. When that time comes, the price will naturally be set by us. In an attempt to convince everyone, he found Big Beard. It was Big Beard's first time seeing so many Six Realms. He couldn't help but feel nervous. Michael said, tell me, how big is that mine? How much blackstone is there in it? Big Beard thought for a while and said, I heard before that the blackstone inside can be mined for 100 or 200 years. But during this time, they've been sending more people and increasing production. The time will probably be greatly reduced. Michael asked again, do you know if Zichun has discovered other similar mines? No, there's only one now. Once it's mined, there won't be any left, Big Beard said. Oh, right. This morning, they didn't collect enough blackstone. I reprimanded them for not keeping their word. Michael nodded and then looked at the others. One of them said, but if we continue to collect, we'll accumulate more and more blackstone. Naturally, we'll have to pay more and more power. It's not a problem for the 7 of us to buy the blackstone in a mine together, Michael said. Just treat it as an investment. If Zichun gives us less than 200 streams of power, we won't sell. This way, the 7 shops' losses will be recouped. Just then, a person walked in and whispered something in Michael's ear. Michael's expression changed immediately. What happened? The others all looked at Michael. Michael said, just now, Zichen's Hall of Magic sent a message over. He said that the production has increased. From tomorrow onwards, we can guarantee about 15,000 blackstone a day. The further we go, the more we'll be able to guarantee 20,000 blackstone a day. What? Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard that. The production had increased, and it was even actively increasing. Was the blackstone really valuable? They began to doubt themselves. It can't be. Why did it suddenly increase? Big Beard muttered in his heart at this moment. Michael said, are you sure that the amount this morning wasn't enough? Big Beard nodded. Not only is it not enough today, it won't be enough for many days. Michael asked again, then did he say that the production will increase tomorrow, or that there will definitely be enough tomorrow? No, he just said that it's very difficult to mine now, so the production is limited. This made the others very confused. The production in the morning was not enough, so why was it enough now and increased by so much? Could it be that another mine was discovered today? But it shouldn't be so fast. Michael suddenly smiled coldly and said, everyone, what if it's like this? They deliberately used the excuse that the production was not enough, but in fact, they were secretly hoarding some blackstone. So now, they want to use all of this blackstone to give us the illusion that there are too many blackstone. Big Beard was confused. But what's the point of giving us this illusion? We're going to take it anyway. Have we signed the contract? Michael smiled coldly. Of course, it's to make us back off. I estimate that not only will there be 15,000 blackstone tomorrow, but in less than 3 days, the amount will increase to 20,000 blackstone. He will deliberately put a lot of pressure on us to make us back off. The others nodded. Michael's deduction was very likely to be correct. Immediately, Michael said, since Zichun has made his move, then we'll take it. From tomorrow onwards, take more power. We'll take as much as they have. Remember, all of it. Whether it's 20,000 or 30,000, we'll take it all. Big Beard accepted the order and left. The next day, the amount increased to 15,000 blackstones. Big Beard bought all of them. On the 3rd day, 18,000 blackstones were all bought. On the 4th day, a total of 20,000 blackstones were bought. When Zichun learned of this, he suddenly laughed. Not bad. Looks like they've taken the bait. Then let's continue. Time passed. In the next few days, more than 20,000 blackstones were provided every day, and the amount was still slowly increasing. A month passed just like that. Zichun really made a lot of money by selling blackstones. It was almost time. If he delayed any longer, it would be disadvantageous to him. So Zi-chun made his move again. Khan appeared. He went to find Hobson for a drink. Hobson saw that he was in a good mood and asked him what he had been busy with recently. Kant, who was already a little drunk, said mysteriously, "Old Hua, I've been rich recently. Zi-chen's side gave me a huge reward. Thanks to you. I'm here to treat you to a drink." "What is it?" Hobson asked curiously. Chapter 51:32. Hearing Kant's words, Hobson's eyes suddenly widened in shock. Seeing the change in Hobson's expression, Kant knew that he had misspoken. He immediately smiled and said, "I'm just joking. What's with your expression?" Hobson said, "That's quite a joke you're making. Everyone's saying that you got something good and sold it for a high price." Kant looked at Hobson carefully and found that his expression didn't change. He nodded and said, "That's right. Lord Zi-chun found it. Of course it's something good." Hobson also nodded and asked, "Why are you looking for me today?" Kant said, "I've been free recently. Lord Zi-chun gave me some salary, so I wanted to find someone to drink with. You know that my friends haven't been very friendly to me recently." Hobson had heard about this and knew the reason. Naturally, it was because of Zi-chun. He said, "Maybe there's some misunderstanding between you two. It'll be fine if you resolve it." Kant sighed and said, "It's really a misunderstanding. They don't know Zi-chun well. Not to mention Lord Zi-chun's fighting ability. Just in terms of business, Lord Zi-chun's brain is almost invincible. Hey, you know, those lousy." Haha. Kant, who was a little carried away, coughed lightly and sighed. "You don't know, but Lord Zi-chun has been very worried recently. He found the black stone by accident, and it's extremely valuable. He wanted to lower the price, so he put it in the Hall of Spiritual Spells. He didn't expect that someone else would also find its value and want to buy it. He had no choice but to raise the price, hoping that the other party would back off. He didn't expect that even if the price was doubled, that person would still want it. So now it's a little troublesome." Kant continued, "You don't know how worried Lord Zi-chun has been recently. He doesn't even want to eat or drink. Even now, he's still trying to think of a way to make them back off and give up." Hobson listened quietly and didn't interrupt. However, he was examining how much of Kant's words were true and how much was false. "Sir Zi-chun asked me to think of a solution, but how could I? That's why I'm also very worried and want to find someone to drink with." Kant patted Hobson's shoulder. "That's why I'm here." Kant raised his wine cup and said, "Come, cheers." After the two of them finished drinking, Kant left. Hobson went back to his house, thinking about Kant's words all the way. Not long after, Michael arrived. Compared to Kangda, Michael, the hallmaster, had known Hobson for a longer time. The two of them might not be friends, but they were definitely familiar with each other. "Did you find out anything?" Michael asked when he came in. Hobson repeated what Kant had said at the table. The gist of it was pretty much the same, and he didn't add anything to it. "I knew that the value of that black stone would be extraordinary," Michael said excitedly. "We're rich this time." In fact, he had looked for Hobson a few times, hoping that he could help him find out some information about the black stone through Kant. After all, they had bought a lot of black stones over the years, and the amount of money they had to pay was astronomical. Even if the 7 halls of spiritual magic worked together, they still couldn't afford it. Looking at the excited Michael, Hobson's eyes were filled with pity. He wasn't sure at first, but now he was sure that they had been fooled by Zi-chun. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" Michael noticed that Hobson's expression had changed. Hobson didn't say anything, and he didn't respond. Michael knew what was going on. He immediately took out some resources and handed them to Hobson. "Is there a problem?" he asked. Hobson frowned slightly, but he still didn't say anything. Michael's expression changed, and his excitement disappeared. He took out a second set of resources. Hobson still didn't say anything. Michael had a bad feeling. This time, he gritted his teeth and took out 3 more sets of resources. 5 sets of resources were placed in front of him. This wasn't a small price to pay. He hoped that Hobson could give him more valuable information. "What he told you just now was what he told me after he woke up. Today, I was drinking with Kant. When we were drinking to our heart's content, he told me that he had become rich recently, and that Zi-chun had given him a lot of rewards." Hobson put away the 5 sets of resources. Rich. Michael's heart skipped a beat. I asked him why, and he blurted out that someone had bought the black stones at a high price, Hobson said. Everyone knows about this. That's not strange, right? Michael was a little unhappy. Just because everyone knew about this, Hobson wanted 5 sets of resources from him? Hobson sneered and said, what if you added the word idiot to that sentence? The black stones had been bought by an idiot at a high price. What? Michael's expression changed drastically, and he stood up immediately. This was an obvious mockery. Why was he mocking him? Of course, it was because the black stones were worthless. Is your information reliable? Michael's face turned very pale. If this was true, they would lose a lot. Hobson shook his head and said, I don't know either. You can judge for yourself. When I heard that, although my expression wasn't as exaggerated as yours, it still changed. He sensed it and immediately said that it was just a joke. At that time, I also said that the joke wasn't funny. After that, we changed the topic, but somehow, we ended up talking about Zi-chan. He praised Zi-chan very much, saying that Zi-chan was very smart and that no one could compare to him in terms of intelligence. Then, he seemed to want to give me an example, but he only said one word before changing the topic again. I realized that after the 2 missteps, he had completely sobered up. This time, he said that he came to me because he was annoyed. He said that the black stones were very valuable, but someone else had found out about it. They had been worried about it, but they couldn't find a way to make the other party back out. Michael's body swayed, and he sat down directly. This time, he understood that what he had said when he was sober was intentional. It was because he had accidentally let it slip. It was like a bolt from the blue. Michael wanted to die. At that moment, he truly understood the value of this information. Not to mention 5 sets of resources, even 50 sets would be enough. He first saluted Hobson and then quickly left. Next, they had to discuss. The 7 of them sat together. After hearing Michael's words, they all looked as if they had been struck by lightning. They had been fooled? At that moment, everyone was burning with anger. Some even wanted to call the bearded man over and chop his head off. It was all because of this guy. Could this be Zi-chen's plan? One of them suddenly said, his goal is to make us retreat in the face of difficulties. The others looked at the person who spoke as if they were looking at an idiot. It was obvious that this was a trap that Zi-chen had set for them. This was what they had hoped for in the end. Looking at everyone's disdainful looks, the man said, there hasn't been any news from inside. So they haven't said that this thing is trash. Trash naturally wouldn't send news. There will only be news if it's something good. Michael gritted his teeth and said, looks like we've been fooled. At that moment, everyone wanted to kill someone. At that moment, the bearded man and Durwood returned. Both of them walked with their heads held high, because Zi-chan was playing tricks on them again. The 2 of them came to look for Michael and were shocked when they saw everyone else. The bearded man sorted out his thoughts and said, Sir, this morning, that little girl told us that the production has increased again. There are 40,000 pieces a day. She asked if we could buy all of them. The few of them looked at each other. At this point, the bearded man smiled and said, we knew that this was a trap to force us to back out. Of course, we wouldn't fall for it. We immediately said that we would buy as much as we could and that we didn't owe them anything. Before the bearded man could claim credit, Michael kicked him. If it was before, he would have thought that this was a trap set by Zi-chen. However, with this piece of news, this was a completely different situation from how he looked at it. The increase in production time and time again was obviously because they were afraid that they would find out and not buy anymore. And they still foolishly thought that this was a trap set by the other party to force them to back out. If they really backed out, would Zi-chan keep those worthless stones for himself to eat? Sir, why are you doing this? The bearded man was stunned by the kick. How dare you trick me? I want you dead. Chapter 51:33. Michael stomped on the bearded man until he cried out, but he did not know what he had done wrong. Durwood stood at the side, feeling a little scared, because he did not know what the bearded man had done wrong. Was he too arrogant? Did the Lord not like it? And Durwood realized that not only did the others not stop him, they even had the thought of stepping forward. This did not seem normal. He was tired of kicking. Only then did Michael sit back down and say, "Everyone, what do you think?" Now, it was almost certain that he had bought a bunch of junk. "Think of a way to get rid of it," one of them said. One of them said, feeling extremely sullen and also extremely helpless. "Get rid of it? How do we get rid of it? Who wants it?" Another person said, "And in such a large quantity?" The bearded man got up and asked, "Lord, what do you mean get rid of it? What are you talking about?" After being beaten up, he was still confused. Looking at the bearded man, everyone was furious. They were all smart people, but they were fooled by this guy. Michael said angrily, "That black stone is junk." The bearded man shouted, "Impossible. How can something Zichun bought at a high price be junk? He just wants to give people a false impression. He's been fooling you. Can't you see it?" Michael was furious. "It's junk. It's junk." The bearded man was dumbfounded. Was it really junk? Could it be that all this was a trap? He could not believe it. Go now and get rid of all these black stones," Michael said coldly. "If you can't get rid of them, I'll get rid of you." The bearded man said, "How? Throw them all away?" Thinking about it, he felt a little aggrieved. He bought them at a high price and was about to throw them away. Change them to power. Change them all to power. Michael almost roared, "If you want to throw them away, don't we know how to do it?" The bearded man looked troubled. "But Lord, since this thing is useless, who would want it?" "I don't care. No matter what, you have to change them to power. Otherwise, just wait for death." Facing Michael's threat, the bearded man felt wronged. This was unreasonable. However, looking at their expressions of wanting to eat him alive, it was obvious that they were being reasonable. After all, the losses were too great. Looking at everyone's murderous eyes, the bearded man, who didn't want to die, said, "With such a large amount, I can only sell it to Zichun." Michael wanted to kick him to death. "Are you an idiot? Do you think he would want it when he knows it's trash? Don't you know how to find someone else to lie to?" Big Beard said helplessly, "My lord, other than Zichun. Who else in the city can eat so many black stones? Do you think Zichun is stupid? Would he want the junk that he sold himself?" Michael was furious. If not for his rationality reminding him, he would have killed someone. He was already buying these black stones, so why don't we just sell them to him? It's just that we don't have the original price. In the end, Big Beard actually lost his confidence. Zichun wasn't stupid. He definitely wouldn't accept it. At this moment, one of them said, "Maybe it's possible." The others all looked at the person who spoke. The other party continued, "Zichun's Hall of Spiritual Spells is a shop that does business. Now that he has blackstones in his shop, what reason does he have to not accept our blackstones?" There was a murderous look in the other party's eyes. "Unless he already knew it was fake and deliberately lied to us. That's why he wouldn't accept it. If that's the case, we have a reason to destroy his shop. Who asked him to sell fake goods?" Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard that. This method was indeed feasible. They had been in despair before, but now there was a glimmer of hope. At this moment, Big Beard thought of something. But what if Zichun is only willing to accept 5 strands of power, or 10 strands of power? One had to know that the price of this item was a full 50 strands of power. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expression turned ugly again. But now that things had come to this, they couldn't treat these trash as treasures, right? Even though he had lost 40 strands of energy, it was still better than nothing. Michael said, "There's no time to lose. Bring all the blackstones over, and bring more people. No matter what, we have to sell these trash back to Zichun. If they don't accept it, don't blame us for taking action." Big Beard said, "Sir, why don't we go together?" This business was too big. He obviously didn't dare to make a decision. After all, they had already lost their money. If they didn't handle it well, they might lose their lives. "If we go, won't Zichun recognize it?" "Sir, you can disguise it a little." This method was naturally feasible. After looking at each other, they decided to follow the crowd. After all, this way, they could deal with some unexpected situations. So, Durwood immediately found a few dozen people to bring all the blackstones. Michael and the other 6 blended into the crowd and didn't seem that conspicuous. When they arrived outside Zichen's hall of spiritual spells and saw so many people in line, their expressions turned even worse. "Get out! All of you get out!" Big Beard and the others went forward and chased the people in the line to the side. They swaggered in. "Where's Milia? Ask that girl to come out." The leader was still Big Beard. Only he could do this kind of thing. Milia quickly arrived. When she saw Big Beard, she immediately said, "Sorry, those Blackstones can only come tomorrow. If you really can't wait, I can urge them again." Hearing this, if they still didn't understand, they would be fools. Those Blackstones were indeed useless. They all wanted to tear this girl apart. "Take a look at this. Do you want it?" Big Beard took out a Blackstone and handed it to Milia. When Milia saw the Blackstone, her expression suddenly changed. She looked at Big Beard and then at the people behind him. "What are you looking at? Do you want it or not?" Big Beard asked. Milia was stunned. She didn't know how to answer. Someone from the side wanted to come over, but the others immediately blocked him and surrounded Maria. "Say, do you want it or not?" Big Beard was aggressive. Milia had never seen such a scene before. She was almost scared to tears. She stuttered and said, "I don't know." "Why don't you wait? Tomorrow, Lord Zichun will come back. I will help you ask." Michael's eyes flashed. He didn't care if his identity would be exposed. He asked directly, "Zichun is not here? Lord is not here." He went to the mine to supervise. Michael was furious when he heard that. It was obvious that Zichun had gone to urge them to speed up the progress. Fortunately, they came. Otherwise, it would be another 40,000 pieces of broken Blackstones tomorrow. However, since Zichun was not here, and looking at this stupid girl, things seemed to be easy to handle. He walked forward, held the Blackstone and said, "You're the one who sold this. A total of 50 streams of power. Have you forgotten? Tell me now, do you want it or not? If you do, everything is negotiable. If you don't, then don't blame us for tearing down your shop and making it impossible for you to continue operating." Michael said coldly, "Because you're selling something that you don't want. This is against the rules." Milia was almost scared to tears. She was at a loss. "Say, do you want it or not?" Michael stared at Milia coldly. He was still aggressive. Yes, we'll take it." Milia quickly nodded. Michael asked again, "How?" Milia said again, 5 streams of power. We'll take it." Big Beard was furious when he heard that. "Do you think we're stupid? The price you're charging at the mine is 10 streams of power. How dare you scheme against us now? Do you want to die? No, we'll also take 10 streams of power." Chapter 51:34. Maria sounded like she was about to cry. She had never seen such a scene before. Everyone's eyes were wide open, and they looked like they were about to eat someone. Her companions were blocked outside and couldn't come over at all. Now, she only hoped that they wouldn't agree. Of course, it would be best if they could delay until the Lord came back. She looked at them with a pleading look in her eyes. She prayed that they wouldn't agree to buy her some time. Looking at Maria's terrified and pleading eyes, Michael knew what was going on. This time, the heavens were still on their side. Or rather, even the heavens couldn't stand Zichen scheming against them. If Zichen was here today, he probably wouldn't want a single strand of power. Even if he did, the price would probably be reduced to the lowest, such as $100 per strand of power. Now, Zichen wasn't here and had gone to the mine. They could naturally guess that Zichen must be urging them to speed up the mining. After all, trash could become treasures in his hands. But today, they had come back to kill him. Zichen would never have thought that they would come to their senses today. In this way, Michael was even more glad that he had given them the 5 portions of resources and indirectly helped them save a lot of losses. "Okay, 10 strands of power it is. Let's settle it now. We'll give you the things. We want power." Michael nodded in agreement. Maria almost fainted when she heard that. Her body was on the verge of collapsing. "Don't think about fainting. With so many of us here, it'll be hard for you to faint. And don't try to stall for time. We'll keep an eye on you. We'll even help you." Michael warned coldly and then looked at Big Beard. Big Beard understood and immediately took out a bunch of rings. Inside were the black stones that they had collected during this period. They didn't know what they were used for, so they didn't touch them. You should have records of these. We haven't touched them since we bought them. Hurry up and give us the power. Big Beard directly stuffed these rings into the hands of the helpless Maria. Then he said almost shamelessly, "Okay, you've taken the things. Now it's time to give us the power. Otherwise, we'll tear down your shop." The others were also aggressive. Around them, there were people who wanted to come over to check out the situation, but they were unable to do so. Kant wasn't in the shop either. The others didn't want to cause trouble, so they didn't come over. Maria was alone, and she was weak. Helpless, she began to count the rings and check the black stones inside. "I say, you did it on purpose, didn't you? How long are we going to count like this? First, bring out an equal amount of power." The bearded man pointed to a ring and said, "There are 25,000 black stones in here. They were collected this morning. Now, give me the same amount of power." Speaking of which, when he bought it in the morning, it was 5 times the original price. Now that he had changed hands, he had lost so much. But now, that was the only way. Fortunately, Zichun was not here. Otherwise, the power given to him would be even less. After all, Zichun was not as easy to bully as this girl. Faced with everyone's pressure, Maria could only bring out batch after batch of power. The power that she had exchanged back then, except for the early ones that were given to Marcus for him to use. The rest were with her. Zichun did not ask for them back. Therefore, the current Maria had enough to pay. Michael was a little puzzled. How could a little girl have so much power on her? But the bearded man explained that everything before was handled by her, and all the power was given to her. When Michael and the others heard this, they felt even more fortunate. The heavens were really opening their eyes. Luck was on their side this time. No one knew if she was scared silly, but in the end, Maria no longer counted. She would give as much as others said, but the total amount added up was not much different from what was sold back then. Maria knew this in her heart. After all, almost all the previous sales had gone through her hands. Finally, all the rings were accounted for. Everyone got all the power that they deserved. In fact, they even asked for more than 100 strands of power, because they took hundreds of black stones to the depths and let the people inside check them. Then, the black stones were left inside. Of course, they would not explicitly tell them this. "I'll leave the rings with you first. When you're done counting, you can give them to us. Or, we'll come back tomorrow to get them." After saying that, everyone left smugly. Seeing everyone swagger away, Maria also heaved a sigh of relief. Lord Zichun was really not around, but before he left, he said that if something unexpected happened, she could handle it herself. One of the points was that if they went back on their word and questioned her with the black stones, she could take back those black stones again, but it definitely could not exceed 10 strands of power. So half of the fear from before was real. After all, so many people surrounded her, and all of them looked fierce. And the other half was a very realistic act. It seemed that women had a natural advantage in acting. In this way, all the black stones were returned, and each one was equivalent to earning an additional 40 strands of power. Maria wondered if they would be pissed to death if they came to buy them back one day. On the way back, Michael and the others also heaved a sigh of relief. This kind of junk was finally sold. They all felt that it was unreal. Losing money was naturally heart-wrenching, but now that they had lost a little, they felt more at ease. "Damn, Zichun, we definitely won't let you go." Michael gritted his teeth. This time, they had been completely played by Zichun. If they had not reacted quickly today and turned the tables, their losses would have been even greater. When he thought about how they would have 40,000 black stones tomorrow at a high price, he could only rejoice in his heart. Then they looked at the bearded man, considering whether or not to let him live. After all, their losses this time were too great. Even if they killed him 100 times, it would not be enough to vent their hatred. "Don't worry, Lord. I'll get the rings back tomorrow morning, and I'll humiliate them again." The bearded man seemed to sense that something was wrong and hurriedly said this. Michael waved his hand, too lazy to pay attention to him. A mere 3rd strength realm cultivator. He could kill him whenever he wanted. For now, he would keep him alive. Early the next morning, the bearded man came to ask for the rings. During this time, he did not forget to point at Maria and deliberately humiliate her. Maria did not refute and returned all the rings. She had already emptied out those black stones. Also on the same day, Michael and the others received news from the depths. The use of the black stones had been found. They indeed contained a special kind of power. Chapter 51:35. The black stone contains the power of shadow destruction. It's useful to us. Bring it all over. This news came from the depths of the forest early in the morning. Michael and the others were all dumbfounded when they heard the news. They felt as if they had been struck by lightning. Their heads were buzzing and could explode at any time. Was the black stone really a good thing? Everyone had the urge to die. They were still feeling smug early in the morning. Although the loss was not small, they had tricked Zichun. The black stone did not fall into their hands in the end. Moreover, they did not continue to be tricked. They had come to their senses in time. They would let Zichun slowly dig. But now, the news came that the black stone was really a good thing. Why didn't you say so earlier? Michael roared in anger. His eyes were full of indignation. Why did it turn out like this? Wouldn't it have been solved if he had come a day earlier? Now, the few of them completely understood and came to their senses. They had been tricked by Zichun. Hobson's news was intentional, or rather, Kant had purposely exposed a flaw in order to bait them into spitting out the black stone. Zichun's ultimate goal was to take away all the black stones. Because this thing was truly a good thing. The remorse in their hearts was indescribable. If they had known this would happen, they would have persevered for a day, even if it was just a day. It was at this point that Bigbeard and Durwood returned. Looking at the lords, Bigbeard said, "My lords, I got the ring back. I even tore up the contract and humiliated the little girl. My lords, you didn't see her expression. It was truly marvelous." Michael narrowed his eyes. This time, he really wanted to kill. The others were the same. Bigbeard was stunned. What was going on? He just wanted to ask for a ring. Why was everyone looking at him like that? Although it's useless, let's keep it first in case it's useful. One of them stood up. This sentence pulled Bigbeard back from the gates of hell. Bigbeard was very grateful, but he was still confused. Why did they want to kill him? Let's go. Michael and the others also stood up and walked outside. Lord, where are you going? Durwood asked from behind. Go and buy more black stones. Michael sighed. It was just one day, just one day. Not only would he be able to cover all his losses, he would also be able to make a fortune. Unfortunately, they couldn't hold on for even a day. The bearded man reacted quickly and exclaimed, "That black stone is good stuff. I told you it was good stuff, real good stuff." His shout immediately attracted many cold gazes. He was so scared that he quickly shut his mouth. Now, everything was clear. These idiots had been tricked by Zichun, thinking that the black stone was trash. Now, after buying it back at a high price, it was cheated by Zichun at a low price. But now that he knew the value of the black stone, could he still buy it back? Even if he bought it back, it would cost him 90 strands of energy. The bearded man also followed. The group of people walked towards the Hall of Magic where Zichun was. When they arrived at the entrance, they saw the people lining up. Then, they thought about the shops that had been abandoned by their side for a long time. They became even angrier and directly drove the people in the line away. Then, he went straight to where Blackstone was. But when they saw the price next to the Blackstone, they almost fainted. 1,000 strands of energy for one piece. This price was 20 times higher than yesterday's price. Milia had just changed the price and was about to leave when she saw a group of people walk in. "Give us back our Blackstone." Michael stared at Milia and said coldly, "You want to buy Blackstone?" Milia looked at them and said, 1,000 strands of energy for one piece. This price was set by Zichun. Milia didn't understand. No one wanted to buy 50 strands of energy. Why would anyone want to buy it at this price? But she could only do as she was told. "We're not buying. We're taking back the Blackstone that belongs to us. Give me back the Blackstone that I gave you yesterday. I'll return the energy to you." Michael took out the energy from yesterday. Just thinking about it made him sullen. "Sorry, the Blackstone now is 1,000 strands of energy for one piece." If you want, you can buy it at this price. Milia smiled apologetically at them and said, if you want a lot, I can help you find Lord Zichun and see if he can give you a discount. Everything else is fine, but there's no discount for this Blackstone. Just then, a voice rang out. It was Zichun. The subordinates surrounding them didn't dare to block Zichun's way. They all moved aside. Zichun walked closer and looked at Michael and the others. He smiled and said, I heard that you returned the Blackstone yesterday and very forcefully threatened my subordinates to return it. You even came early this morning and tore up the contract we signed. You even deliberately humiliated me? You're so untrustworthy. How can I give you a discount? Zichun looked them up and down and said, if you want 1,000 strands of energy for one piece, I have as much as you want. In fact, he was very glad that he wasn't too greedy and didn't wait a little longer. Otherwise, he would be the one to become a joke. Looking at their expressions, it was clear that the people inside had already figured out the use of the Blackstone. This time, he couldn't hide it anymore. The Blackstone was a treasure. Are you sure you won't return my Blackstone? Michael stared at Zichun, a cold glint in his eyes. Zichun smiled. What do you mean return it? If you want it, you can buy it. 1,000 strands of energy. Oh, I almost forgot. Your shops aren't doing well. I guess you don't have any more resources now, right? Zichun, don't go too far. Michael said coldly. Return the Blackstone to us, and we'll write off our grudge. Otherwise, don't even think about having an easy time in the future. He held up the ring full of energy. This is the price you gave me yesterday. I'll buy it back at this price. Zichun mockingly said, your plan is quite good. Unfortunately, your threat is nothing more than a joke in my eyes. A joke? Michael said. You have to understand that we're working for the people inside. Right now, they're asking for the Blackstone. Once we tell them the truth, what do you think the people inside will think? Zichun laughed. They'll think you're a bunch of trash. Zichun didn't care about their threats at all. He waved his hand and said, do you want to buy something? If not, then leave. Don't delay my business. You asked for it and ruined your own business. Don't drag me down with you, right? If your Hall of Magic is willing to sell, remember to tell me. I'll be happy to take it for you. Looks like you're forcing us. A cold light flashed in Michael's eyes. Do you really think I can't do anything to you? He stepped down, and the big bearded man's leg was broken. The man howled. Michael said, you can go lie down outside. Just say that you bought his stuff and aggravated your injury. The big bearded man immediately wailed and walked to the door to lie down. Come and see. He's selling fake goods. Chapter 51:36. Everyone, come quickly. He's selling fake goods. Liar. This is an unscrupulous merchant. Big Beard was rolling on the ground, wailing miserably, which attracted a lot of attention. Michael was very satisfied with this. At least this guy had a good eye. Hearing Big Beard's wailing, Zichun was amused. These fellows were really lawless. In front of so many people, they started to shift the blame to others. Could they be more credible? However, it was understandable. These people had been tricked and suffered a huge loss. It was not strange for them to act so crazily. Everyone, you saw it. The resources in his shop are fake. After refining them, my legs became crippled. It's over. I can't be a normal person for the rest of my life. Big Beard was still rolling on the ground. Michael said indifferently, none of you saw it. Why aren't you leaving? The others retreated far away, but they did not leave. Everyone saw it clearly. Besides, they already knew what kind of people Michael and the others were. If not for Zichun's shop persisting, who knew how many of them would have died because of the price increase in the 7 shops? However, they were mad as if they had lost their minds. No one dared to say anything. They could only wait and see. If Zichun could not handle this matter well, they could come back tomorrow. Even if they had to wait a few days, they could not close the shop. This hall of spiritual magic had become their only support. The smile on Zichun's face disappeared. You lost out on the black stone. That's because you have bad eyesight. You can't blame anyone else. But now, you're pestering me endlessly and hindering my business. That's not fair. So what if I'm not fair? Michael stared at Zichun. He had already lost his mind. I'm telling you, if you don't hand over the black stone, we won't let you do business in the future. This is just child's play. I have many moves to deal with you. Then, he turned around and pointed at the others. And all of you, don't even think about coming here to buy anything. Wait for your death. Everyone was furious, but no one dared to say anything. So powerful? Then let's try. Zichun walked forward. He arrived in front of Big Beard. If Zichun had not spoken up, Marcus would have killed this guy. Now, it seemed that sparing his life back then was the right choice. The other party had indirectly helped him earn a huge sum of money. It was a huge sum. With that power, Zichun didn't need to spend anything else and could smoothly produce a lot of black stone. It was equivalent to Michael and the others paying to help dig out the black stones, and they didn't ask for a single piece. When the bearded man saw Zichun walking towards him, he wailed even louder. Scream as much as you want. I won't kill you. Zichun smiled faintly and then directly attacked, easily cutting off Big Beard's 4 limbs. Pooh, 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 pooh. The intense pain caused the bearded man to be unable to catch his breath. Even his howling stopped. Following that, Zichun kicked out and sent Big Beard flying into the distance. Big Beard's body landed heavily on the ground. He continued to wail, but this time, there was a strong sense of fear in his voice. Zichun, how dare you kill someone here? Michael pointed at Zichun. In your eyes, do you still have? Before he could finish speaking, his raised arm suddenly separated from his body. Pooh! Because he was in the 6 powers state and had a real body. When his arm fell off, blood immediately spurted out. Michael screamed in shock. Swoosh! The slaughter spirit began to circle around Michael and attacked, drawing rays of light one after another. After 3 rounds, Michael fell to the ground. He was already a human stick. All 4 of his limbs were cut off, and he stood there straight. Ah! The intense pain caused Michael to scream. You broke the rules. Do you want to die? The others looked at Zichun in shock. They didn't expect him to be so bold to attack here. What are you all waiting for? Hurry up and kill him. Michael roared angrily. Zichun broke the rules first. Even if they killed him now, it would be justified as self-defense. As soon as he said that, many people rushed out. But what awaited them was almost the same. Zichun stood there without moving. The spirit of massacre was enough to settle all the battles. In the blink of an eye, the few people who rushed out were all human sticks, no different from Michael. As for the others who followed, they hid in the Hall of Spiritual Spells and didn't dare to come out again. It was obvious that they were aware that they were no match for Zichun, and that they would only be courting death if they came out. Wails rang out, attracting even more people. Zichun glanced at the crowd and said, I said, if you scream again, you will die. With just one sentence, all the howls came to an abrupt end. Including Michael, no one was screaming anymore. He came to his senses, and his whole person was awake. All this time, they didn't go against Zichun because of their strength. Because even a 6th-realm spellbreaker would die instantly if he came here, let alone them. After waking up, he was a little scared. Luckily, Zichun didn't kill anyone. Otherwise, they would have died for nothing. Seeing that the crowd stopped wailing, Zichun said, Take these guys away. If there is a next time, don't blame me for being merciless. As soon as he said that, the people inside immediately ran out and took the crowd away as fast as they could. Soon, the place returned to normal. Zichun walked upstairs. This was just a small interlude. The trouble now was that the secret of the black stone had been exposed. It was almost impossible to get such a cheap mine. Moreover, Zichun was more worried about whether the people inside would have designs on his black stone. After all, the black stone was very useful to the Shadow Destroyers. The other Shadow Destroyers were still waiting for him to bring it back to save their lives. The 7 halls of spiritual spells led by Michael had suffered a great loss. Naturally, this matter couldn't be left unsettled. Moreover, they had been turned into human sticks in front of everyone this time. It was an even bigger loss of face. All kinds of hatred added up, and they were about to go crazy. On the way back, everyone kept cursing and swearing. But after cursing, they still had to calm down and think about how to deal with Zichun. Their injuries hadn't healed yet, so they gathered together again. Michael said as he healed, "Everyone, think of a way. We must vent our anger." Beside him, someone said, "You tried today. It's almost impossible to kill Zichun with brute force. If we continue to provoke him, only death awaits. Unless—" Everyone looked at the person who spoke. A cold look flashed in his eyes. "Unless we can contact the people inside. You know, there are many people who want to kill Zichun." Chapter 51:37. I'm not going to update today. I'm going to sort out the rest of the story. Thunder Marshall is not updated today. Please wait for a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 51:38. The 7 Hallmasters of the Hall of Spiritual Spells were sitting together to discuss how to deal with Zichun. It was impossible for them to kill Zichun with their own combat power. Hence, they had to seek help from the Hall of Spiritual Spells. But before they asked for help, they had to tell them the truth. This put them in a difficult position. What if the Hall of Spiritual Spells blamed them for their incompetence? No matter how they thought about it, they could not come up with a good idea. Just as they were at their wits' end, Michael suddenly said, "The most important thing is to clear our names. Only then will we not be punished by the Hall of Spiritual Spells." Everyone knew this, but how could they clear their names? The Hall of Spiritual Spells was in their hands, and their business was not good. And they were the ones who sold the black stone. How could they clear their names? Michael said, "Think about it. What is the reason for us to be forced to this point?" One of them said, "Zichun lowered the price." That was only one reason. Everyone knew that the second reason was that they had raised the price without permission, causing complaints everywhere. Of course, they had deliberately ignored their own mistakes. Michael shook his head and said, "Wrong. The main reason is that Hobson gave Zichun's Hall of Spiritual Spells a very low price, but not us. Hence, Zichun deliberately lowered the price and started a price war with us. The main culprit is Hobson." Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard that. That's right. The main culprit was Hobson. Why didn't they think of shifting the blame? Also, why did we sell the black stone? Was it because Hobson colluded with Zichun and gave us false information? Michael gritted his teeth and said, "He deliberately harmed us. Naturally, the responsibility lies with him." Everyone was enlightened. If that was the case, this matter had nothing to do with them. This way, they could clear their names. As for how Hobson would be affected if they put the blame on him, no one had ever thought about it. Zichun knew that those guys would not let this matter go. As for what they would do, Zichun was not sure. But he was sure that it had something to do with the Hall of Spiritual Spells. Du and I, who had originally recruited him, had never appeared again after giving him this identity. Now that the power of the black stone had leaked out, how would the people inside react? Zichun did not know, but he firmly believed that the people inside would definitely intervene in this matter. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to send the second wave of black stones to the last living space of the Shadow Destroyer clan. On the same day, Michael sent the news inside. There had always been 2 voices regarding Zichun, the Shadow Destroyer. One was that he should be killed in order to prevent future trouble. They were considered radicals. The other side was relatively more peaceful. They said that since they had already broken through, they would wait and see. After all, they had also encountered a bottleneck. Although the news had been sent to the radical faction, the pacifist faction still had a say in the matter of Zichun. No one was interested in knowing whether the news was true or false because it was meaningless. What they cared about was the black stones that contained the power to kill flies, as well as Zichun's identity. Thus, the 2 factions sat together to discuss this matter. Among them was Dooney, the representative of the moderate faction. "What do you think of the black stone?" Du and I asked. "What do we think?" One of the radicals said, "Do we need to think about this kind of thing? Of course, we'll go outside and bring back all the black stones." According to the records, Zichun has already bought those mines, Du and I said. "These black stones belong to him. I'm afraid it's not appropriate for us to go out and take them back directly. He's just a shadow destroyer living an ignoble existence. What right does he have to negotiate with us? It's his good fortune that we're interested in the black stones," the radical said. "If he dares to say no, Just kill him, the radical said. The shadow destroyers are all dead. He's just a fish that escaped the net. We're already being very kind to him by letting him live. As a dog, he should have the awareness of being a dog. The other radicals nodded their heads in agreement. They had always thought that Ziqian was still alive because of their benevolence. The moderate faction frowned, thinking that this method was inappropriate. No matter what, Pofa City is a place of reason. If we rob without distinguishing right from wrong, it won't be good for our reputation, Duanai said. Duanai said, after all, we are not the only ones here. The radical faction said, then let's first investigate who sold the mines privately. Without our permission, it's invalid. Duanai did not speak, still frowning. Duanai, you must know what the higher-ups want. They want us to bring back the black stones. Why do you keep stopping us? The radical faction stared coldly at Duanai. Oliver, you don't have to threaten me, Duanai said. I'm telling the truth. If we break the rules and make a big deal out of it, it won't be easy for everyone. As long as everything is within the rules, you can do whatever you want. You should have said so earlier. Oliver smiled coldly. Now, I'll show you how we can get the black stones within the rules and make Ziqian understand that he's a dog at the same time. On the same day, Oliver went out alone. First, he went to Pofa Hall to look for Nan Can. Nan Can was the one who sold the mines to Ziqian. After Oliver investigated, he found that there were no violations. Many people had seen the mines, and they had long declared them to be trash. As for the black stones, some people knew about them, but they also said they were trash. Moreover, this kind of sale of useless mines had happened many times. It could be said that over the years, only he, Nan Can, had sold the mineral veins that were truly trash. The others had sold them with value. No matter how unreasonable Oliver was, it was impossible for him to find any problems or troubles here. It was written in black and white, and he could not take it back. Therefore, he went to Pofa Hall to investigate Hobson, but he still did not find any problems. Hobson gave him the price because he had the right to. However, Oliver did not stay idle. He removed Hobson from his position, which was also his right. After that, he appointed a new person. It was the 7-strength realm person who had plotted against Ziqian but failed. His previous position was slightly lower than Hobson's. The first thing he did after taking over was to restore the price to the original price. This way, Ziqian's profit would be reduced by a lot because of the 10% discount. Under the lead of Michael and the others, Oliver went to look for Ziqian. Outside Spiritual Spell Hall number 4, Oliver looked at the people in line and sneered. As long as he raised the price, the business here would naturally decline. What are you looking at? Hurry up and scram. Michael shouted at the people in line. Ziqian, hurry up and get down here. Lord Oliver is here to inspect. Oliver stood there with an arrogant expression. He pointed at the ground in front of him and said, Later, let him kneel here.